the new kings winning this fight tonight with our name lit up in lights. We are the new kings. This is our time to shine. Set off like dynamite. We are the new kings winning this fight tonight with our name lit up in lights. We are the new kings. This is our time to shine. Set off like dynamite. We are the new kings winning this fight tonight with our name lit up in lights.
This is Whataburger Friday Night Stars, presented by Game On Sports, live from the Star in Frisco, Texas, and the Dallas Cowboys headquarters. Here's Kyle Yeomans, Zach Wolchuk, Eric Chiafalo, and Heckma Harrison.
Week 10 of Texas high school football, and we are live from the Star in Frisco. It's Whataburger Friday Night Stars, and we look a little different this week. No Zach Wolchuk, no Eric Chiafalo, but we're going to be trucking along with two incredible Texas high school football minds. To my right, Mr. Guy Frazier.
What's up?
Always a pleasure. He's been on the table a couple times here in
third time.
2019. Yeah, you've been here almost as much as some of us
Wolchuk and
have.
some of these guys.
Yeah, Wolchuk tends to skip out. So.
Keeping the chair warm.
Yeah, you keep it warm for Eric over there. And then over here, we've got history being made. Mallory Hartley making her Friday Night Stars debut. Mallory, glad to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
I mean, it's a whole new look. It's a different feel. But at the same time, I still get to see the beautiful face of Heckma Harrison across
Lucky
the
you.
way. Lucky me.
Lucky you. And if we could, please, can we make this permanent so that I don't have to sit next to Zach anymore? This would be the equivalent of Zach kissing a frog and turning into Mallory. So why don't we do that?
So nice.
Huh? Why don't we do that? Huh? Is there any way?
Good to me, I guess. I mean,
Thank
sorry,
the Lord.
Zach.
Thank the gods. Finally.
Heckma has had some prayers answered over the last couple of days.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we're excited to have both Guy and Mallory here for Week 10. Guy, you're a stadium body, no doubt about it.
No doubt about it.
But you're
There's no way he's comfortable with being. He doesn't want to be here. Do you understand that?
Exactly.
I don't know how you got him to be here, knowing that HP is playing Lancaster today.
Baby.
And he doesn't want to. He has a look of a man that does not want to be with us.
That's not true.
It is true. Admit it. Admit you don't want to be here.
I'm a stadium body, but it's Friday night,
Lancaster
so I'm
Highland
excited.
Park right now. It's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will I prefer to be in Wevo country? Sure. But we're here. We're going to rock out. We're going to have a good time.
Let's go.
Yeah, we absolutely are, and we're going to talk about that game quite a bit. That one getting kicked off at 7:30. We'll be joined by Miles Dunklin coming up here in about 30 minutes or so, and we'll talk a little bit more about Lancaster and Highland Park. But Zach and Eric out doing their duties with 105.3 The Fan. They had a magnificent opportunity, and they are hosting tonight. Don't tune into them right now, one, because they're not on the air. Wait till our show is over, and then, or you could do it simultaneously. But we love Zach and Eric, and hey, we might even get a call from them at some point throughout the night, or maybe even next week, to talk a little high school football. They sent their well wishes to us earlier. So it is a different look, but it's Texas high school football. Mallory, a graduate of Arlington High, currently at the University of North Texas, so she's a Colt at heart.
Kick them forever, for sure.
And then you've got Guy Frazier, of course, the Highland Park Scotty over here.
There you go.
So well represented still in the DFW area around Texas high school football. So how about this? Let's get started with a couple of Thursday night games. And I know this will start things off really easily because Mallory and Guy were out at these Thursday night games. We'll start with Mallory's game last night. Denton Ryan at home hosting Grapevine in a District 4-5A bout. Two teams that up at the top of the standings in that district, but overall, Denton Ryan just absolutely dominant. 560 yards of total offense, 27 first downs for the Ryan Raiders, and they're now 8-0 in the season. And Mallory, what did you see from this ball game?
You know, honestly, I kind of think, I hate to say it, but I think this game was kind of already over before it started. I mean, Denton Ryan just looked like a championship contender team. I mean, they were completely amazing. Just in that first half, I mean, they held Grapevine to just 25 total yards.
Wow.
I mean, no touchdowns. It was a 45-0 just at that halftime. And I mean, they just looked amazing. Billy Bowman Jr., he's committed to UT, and Drew Sanders, an Alabama commit. They both shared 6 touchdowns just in that first half. Billy Bowman Jr. had a 62-yarder off a punt return. I interviewed him, so we'll see that a little bit later. But yeah, they just looked, I mean, incredible.
Looked the part.
And you mentioned Billy Bowman Jr., the 61-yard touchdown run last night off of the return. I mean, that was a highlight reel play, kind of blew up on social media last night. But he's just an all-around athlete, a freak of nature. I know Heckma's kind of commented on it before, but Billy Bowman Jr. is almost your stereotypical athlete in football. Yeah,
I mean, if you look at Denton Ryan, and like Mallory said, I mean, this is it was over before it started. I would agree with that, and I didn't even have to watch the game. It was over before they got off the buses. The truth is with Denton Ryan is we're used to seeing them dominate like this at this point. I think everybody is just waiting to see what's going to happen in playoffs with Denton Ryan. We know where it all starts, and that's in the playoffs for them. But they have completely dominated 4-5A.
Right.
I mean, they are running through that division. I don't think that as far as the point differential with these guys, I mean, there hadn't been a game that's been close besides the first half against Colleyville.
Right. Well, I'll drop a little stat to kind of piggyback on you there. They've won their games by a difference on average of 44.1 points.
I knew you'd have it. That's why I loved it. It was a grapefruit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's just nutty, though. That's complete domination, and still shows that they're the bully not only in 4-5 AD1, but really just Region 1 in general.
And is it kind of surprising to see that defense without any turnovers, even though it was still a dominant game overall? Is that surprising to you?
Because I would say that they probably get a couple turnovers a game. I don't look at all their box scores, but they definitely have the talent on that side of the ball. But when you look at what they did on offense last night, it was so much just balance in general. 560 total yards, but it was really kind of split down the middle from a passing and getting it done on the ground as well. So it's just a balanced night. And then you look at Billy Bowman and Drew. They had a competition mid-game, just kind of out-competing each other and just having a friendly competition, who's going to outperform. And I mean, that just shows when you're having that type of fun with your teammates, it's pretty easy.
And when you have a duo that dynamic, it makes a difference. It absolutely does. Well, like Mallory alluded to earlier, she got an opportunity to catch up with one half of that duo, Billy Bowman Jr., after the win.
Score here tonight was Denton Ryan 61 and Grapevine 13. I'm here with Billy Bowman Jr., who had a significant impact in tonight's game. Billy, you had a total of 3 touchdowns in tonight's game, one of which was a 62-yarder off a punt return. Tell me a little bit about that.
To be honest, I was kind of surprised when they punted me the ball because not many teams do that. So when I got it, I just know that all my teammates go to our sideline. So right when I got it, just took to our sideline and took it all the way.
What a dominant showing on both sides of the ball tonight from you guys. What's one thing you can take away from this win?
I mean, it's a great win, dominant win. I felt like we were hitting on all cylinders in the first half, and we just got to come back and do it every other week.
You take on Birdville, who ranks second in y'all's District 4-5A next week. How does preparation look different next week for you guys?
We finally get a full week of practice. You know, all of our recent games have been on Thursday, so we're definitely going to get practice in. I mean, we approach it how we do every week. We play who we play, and we got to go dominate the next opponent.
All right, thanks, Billy, so much, and congratulations. You can catch highlights from this game on our Twitter page on Friday_stars, or you can check out our show starting at 5 p.m. tomorrow night. Thanks for watching.
Back here, and hey, I like the plug at the end. That was solid.
Thank you. I changed it up a little bit this week.
Yeah,
I felt like
good.
it was kind of routine. So
She knew she was going to be in there with you guys.
Yeah,
You see that?
I
Get it
gotta-
done
I gotta
automatically.
You see that? She
can
stepped
watch
that
me
all the way
tomorrow.
up, right? Yeah.
But, I mean, overall, just kind of, and you mentioned this in the middle of the interview. You laughed and chuckled at the fact where he was like, oh, they punted the ball to me. I'm not used to seeing that.
He was shocked. He was like, man, the band started playing as soon as the punt went up.
I think he was even surprised at what happened. Yeah.
Everybody
Recipe
knows
for
you don't
disaster.
punt the ball to that guy.
No.
No, not at all. And maybe that's a lesson to be learned for a lot of the other teams that are to be in the path of the Raiders moving forward. All right, let's go to guys' game last night. South Oak Cliff hosting Kimball. 31-17 the final score. South Oak Cliff.
That's my hood.
And they put it in their face last night. 31-17. Forced a couple of turnovers and really just a solid win after a slow start for Sock early on.
Yeah, for sure, a slow start. It was a tale of two halves for them last night. First half was really dominated by Kimball from the standpoint of good defense and getting Sock off the field. And then Brandon Epton Jr., running back for Kimball, who had 143 yards and a touchdown last night, was a kid that really impressed me throughout the night. But his first half was extremely impressive from just that standpoint. Then the second half happened. It was a totally different story. Sock came out and kind of punched Kimball in the face early and often in the second half, and that started with a 50-plus yard drive on the opening drive of the third quarter, and they never really looked back. They took their first lead and then from there piled it on. They actually got up at the 31-10 at one point before Kimball got a cheap score there in the, I think, final minute of the game. But one thing that stood out to me was in the first half, on 4 out of Sock's 5 drives, they ended with a punt. And then in the second half, 4 out of their 6 drives, and I'm not going to really count the 6th one because it was just one knee down there at the end, they ended with a score. So it was a complete flip. So Coach Todd obviously got his message across there at halftime, and Cam Davis and company kind of just rode it out and got their win over their Oak Cliff neighbors.
Yeah. Now, this is the equivalent of the Oak Cliff Super Bowl.
Right.
You know, Carter Kimball, South Oak Cliff. Mm-hmm. So, tensions, if you follow them on Twitter, the tensions has been...
it's been there.
Extremely high.
All-time high.
Kimball's been calling them since the summertime.
Exactly. And so, Kimball's trying to find a name for themselves, and they think that they're going to get that through this game. So this was a big game for both of these teams. Jason Todd has been doing a great job at turning over his roster. Mm-hmm. Like an NFL coach, trying to find out what I'm going to get at quarterback, certain things. They're still not getting an answer on quarterback because how do you pronounce this kid? Donez. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a good kid.
Yeah,
really good kid.
I'm sure he is wonderful. The whole Dunn family is. But 4 completions, 45 yards, but 1 touchdown.
Right.
I guess that'll get it done for you versus
Kimball. That was going to be kind of my point. Was there was the tale of two halves part, and then the other thing I walked away with, I think they really missed Sean Sims more this year than they thought they were going to.
Oh, absolutely.
Who graduates at Navy now.
Mm-hmm.
At least he committed there and signed, so I think he's there. But I think they miss him a lot more than probably they expected to. And then guys like Stephen Parker, who are gone on the defensive side, they're really good in the secondary with Jonathan Davis and Courtland Flowers, but that front part does not have near the size that they did last year and near the speed either. So it's a little bit of a different Sock team, but they're still talented and got some dudes on both sides of the ball and definitely looking to make a run in the playoffs.
Now, as far as Cam Davis is concerned, he's a kid that I've been talking about since the beginning of the season, just saying the kind of speed that he has, 190 yards, no touchdowns.
No.
But as far as the physical, 17 carries, 190 yards, these are all big plays.
Right. No, he had some really big chunk plays, and one of them was a big 21-yard run, I think it was, on the opening drive to start the third quarter. And he started to open it up, and he never found pay dirt and got into the end zone, but he was kind of the one guy that got them down the field into situations where they could score. Then they had other guys finish off the drives. But, no, he did his part last night despite not actually getting a touchdown. So.
Yeah, now, we all know, we talked to Coach Todd last year, and his number one concern is he knows in the division that he's going to be in, Alito is going to be there. Yep. That's for sure. Now, Alito's had their own challenges this year versus teams that are run heavy.
For sure.
You've watched a lot of football, guy. What do you think? Obviously, this is a matchup. Even if they get to that point, but that was pretty much the litmus test for them, saying Alito is where we got to go.
So my thing is, I haven't seen Alito this year in person, so it's hard for me to really comment on some of that. But I think the difference might be this year's, I don't think the Sock defense is as good as it was last year. So I think while Sock's offense might be fine running the ball, I think you got to find some sort of passing game at some point to keep just opposing defenses honest.
Right.
But with that said, I think the running game's going to be fine with Mike Tavian Titus and
Cam Davis.
But the defensive side of things, you got to deal with JoJo Earl and McClellan and Bishop at Bishop at quarterback for Alito. So there's a lot of talent on that side of the ball at Aledo, and I kind of wonder how Sock will handle that from a defensive standpoint.
Well, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I mean, that defense probably isn't what it was last year. I mean, by any means, but on the other offensive side, they've got some pieces to work with. You got a chance to catch up with Mr. Davis after the big win last night.
All right, Guy Frazier with Friday Night Stars. We just went final here at Kincaid Stadium, where tonight Dallas South Oak Cliff defeats Dallas Kimball 31-17. Here at junior running back for Sock, Cam Davis. Cam, first off, just let me know what it's like to get a win over Kimball there. And I know there's a little bit of talking going into this game. Talk about just getting that solid win tonight.
It's great to get the win. Partly because it was a rivalry. We kind of treat it as a rivalry, but at the same time, it's a good win to add to our record. So it'll help our playoff ranking. Seeding.
Now, you had 190 yards tonight, a couple big chunk plays for you. Talk about your game tonight.
I didn't even know I had 190. I just, was trying to do the best for the team, get the first downs when I can, get the yards that I can get, try to keep going.
Now, I got to ask about the red undershirts and red socks. What's the reasoning behind that?
It was just a little statement to show that tonight was our night, and, we're there, row. We dark side, and we're going to come to play.
All right, last question I got for you. Early on in the season, y'all suffered a couple losses. Good opponents, but, you learn from those. Now you're hitting your stride as a team. What's this team, feel like right now going into playoff season?
We feel that we can be better, but that just means we have to work harder at practice, get in the weight room more, and we have to be more disciplined.
Cam, appreciate you stopping by to chat with me. Good luck the rest of the way, and we'll see you down the road.
Thank you.
Okay, so I do want to make one quick correction. It's Jake Bishop, that's the Aledo quarterback.
Oh, okay.
His older brother, Matt Bishop's at Tarleton now. And I knew, as I said, I was like, I think I just referenced his older brother. So I know there's a couple Bishops that have played at Aledo. They've been there for years.
The Bishops, man. You can't go wrong, man. We don't correct stuff.
I think we've had 3 or 4 of them.
Too much of that Texas high school football
Hey,
knowledge.
sometimes you can know.
It gets a little mixed.
It gets a little
mixed
Guy,
up.
I
Just
mess
too
up
smart.
all the time. They never
You're
tell me to
telling
say,
us.
oh, on that last one, no, it didn't happen. We just roll
Well,
with
if
it.
you remember last week on the call, and I had a name wrong, and I kind of
You had a senior moment.
I had a
dog. It's
senior
okay.
moment.
It's okay.
I was like,
It happens all the time.
Let's quickly go to Saxy and South Garland last night. Saxy, an impressive win, got out in front of I always mess up this name. The Colonels?
The
Colonels.
Colonels? It's just the Colonels, right?
Just the Colonels.
Yep.
Is it Bishop Dunn or Bishop Dune?
It's Dune for
Okay,
you.
that's what I thought. All right, 41-20, the final score, though. Pretty even on both sides, at least stat-wise, including the lack of passing, especially on the Mustang side, but they didn't really need any help last night.
No, Saxy is Zach Walchuk's team. Everybody, knows that
Yeah.
they're going to win this division easily. 10-6A belongs to Saxy.
Yeah.
Saxy had a really good game last week versus Lakeview Centennial. I think they're building on that. This week was just a continuation. 10-6A, I can tell you, it's one of the most bipolar districts of all because the bottom half can beat the top half. You never know what you're going to get every week in 10-6A.
It's the Box of Chocolates district, right?
Something like that. I tried to avoid saying that. It was right there, but I didn't go for
Well,
it.
isn't
did
it
it
funny,
anyways.
while it still is, and it's been a lot of parity-filled stuff going on in that district that year, Saxy has still kind of found a way to rise to the top again. And I think that says a lot about that program, just the consistency they've had the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, coaching has been a big part of it, but that defense, typically always kept a good defensive line and always have been good on the back half. So very speedy team. Doesn't surprise me that they got the victory last night. Wouldn't have surprised me if they lost last night either. But that's just the way it goes in that division.
Well, and that's kind of what you talked about earlier. That's one of the great Friday Night Stars Heckma wins this year, at least, is
one.
saying, hey, like, you and Zach disagreed on that, and Zach was like, yeah, no, that's Saxy running away with it. But you're like, no, anybody can beat anybody in this district. And that ended up being the case. So it's kind of pretty interesting overall to kind of look at how things unfolded. But like you said, Saxy's still kind of rising to the top in that district regardless. Let's go to the other game that was in that 10-6A district last night. Wiley taking down North Garland 38-28, the final score in this one. Almost 400 total yards of offense. A very similar game to the game that we just got done talking about. A couple more turnovers, though.
Yeah, it's ugly. 5 turnovers. I'm telling you, both coaches have got to be, a film session today was pretty heated. But, man, there's only one name to talk about in this game, and that's Marcus McElroy. It was the Marcus McElroy show. Okay, 257 yards passing, 51 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns for McElroy. He was Mr. Everything for the Pirates. These guys, this is a good win for them. I think it propels them. I think that's going to be 4th in standings where they're going to go to the playoffs as well. But it's still, I think the last game is versus South Garland. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say that was a really big one from the standpoint of, in my projections as of how I see things panning out, they will be a 6A D2 team for their district, but I actually have them as the first place team out of the 2 D2 for 10-6A, which means they get to play at home. And as of right now, they're paired with Prosper.
Right.
So it'd be a home game
actually,
against
I don't know
Prosper?
if it would be a home. Never mind, because 6A is different than the other 5A through 2A in that you don't actually get to play home. So that would be a neutral site.
Yeah.
But still, that does avoid them from being on the same side of the bracket with Longview.
Yeah.
So that's big.
And give credit to North Garland at the same time. I mean, the Raiders were down by 3 heading into halftime, made that a game early on against a Wiley team that you kind of expected to kind of take over. But now Wiley has won their last 3 games, and they conclude the season next Friday against South Garland. So we're going to take a quick break here on Friday Night Stars. Just ran through some of the Thursday finals. When we come back, we'll start looking at some of these Friday matchups. We'll also be joined by Miles Dunklin on the phone talking about Highland Park and Lancaster. And then you've also got Nick Harris from the Old Coach in studio. He'll join us right around 5:45 when we come back here on Whataburger Friday Night Stars.
I'm Billy Martin. I'm an Executive Vice President with North Dallas Bank and Trust. It's about authentic intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. At local banks like North Dallas, we give you personalized service that you just can't get at the big banks. Everything we do is driven by your best interest. We call it having a high YQ or U quotient.
Hey, I'm Jack. We started SeatGeek because we want fans to have a better, more transparent ticket buying experience. With SeatGeek, you can see the best deals and buy tickets, all with a price match guarantee. The only thing we can't guarantee is that your team will win. So use the code TICKETS20 at checkout for $20 off your first order.
It's game day. A day that should be spent in the living room, not the kitchen. So next game, you just worry about the score, because we've got the food covered. With hand-battered, cooked-to-order, always fresh, never, ever frozen chicken fingers, craveable cane sauce, crispy crinkle-cut fries, and jugs of freshly made tea and lemonade. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, one love.
Back back here from the Star in Frisco. Beautiful home to the Dallas Cowboys. There's a look inside the Cowboys locker room as they prepare for their Monday night game. They just hopped on a plane going to New York to take on the Giants. We're preparing for Week 10 of Texas high school football. Kyle Yeomans, Mallory Hartley, Heckma Harrison, and Guy Frazier joining you here for Friday Night Stars. Let's get into some of these Friday games. We'll talk to Miles Dunklin, the voice of the Highland Park Scots, coming up here in about 5 minutes or so. Let's start with Arlington Lamar and Arlington Bowie. Two squads very high right now. 4 games in a row for Lamar on their winning streak. Then you've got a 5-game winning streak for the Bowie Volunteers. This is kind of an underrated game with Highland Park and Lancaster, and then you've also got the Allen and Prosper matchup. This one's kind of lost in the shuffle, but there's a good chance this might be the best game of the week.
I totally agree. This is definitely probably my top favorite game of this week. Both of these teams, I mean, they're always in the top of District 4 6A. It's a tough district to be in for sure. Lamar is ranked 3rd right now, and Bowie's kind of tied with Martin for that first place spot. Bowie's had a kind of tough year. They had a player pass away, Anthony Strather, in a heartbreaking. That was the week before the Arlington game. But since then, they've put up 50 points in the last 2 games. They beat Arlington that night by 1 point. That was a crazy game to watch. Lamar and Bowie, they're both very similar teams. I mean, they've met up a bunch of times in the past few years. I think one standout player, though, I think that's really going to rip up this Lamar defense is Bowie's quarterback, Drayvon Ponder. I mean, he's got 10 pass touchdowns this year, 11 rushing touchdowns, so he's definitely that definition of a dual threat quarterback, and 597 rush yards. I mean, this dude's insane. He's gonna give that Lamar defense some trouble. I mean, I have to mention my brother, Joey Hartley. Joey, if you're watching this, you gotta work a little bit harder. By the way, Heckma, he is my brother. He's not my cousin. He's not my...
Mallory, listen, I'm telling you, I was reading the name. This is what happened. And I was trying to be clever, right? So you understand why you're doing this, and you're like, no. And I saw Hartley, and I was like, and no relation to Mallory.
Little did you know, right?
Lift on that one.
Yes.
But I got to brag on him for a minute. I mean, he's got 29 total tackles on the year, 1 pick six, and 2 fumble recoveries. And
so he's not just a player; he's a stud.
Yeah, and he didn't even play last year. I mean, he transferred to Lamar his junior year and didn't play, came back, and he's done great. And along with Joey Hartley, you've got Javion Moore, who's also he's got 56 solo tackles this season, 61 in total, and 2 sacks. So I don't know. I mean, they might give Bowie's offense a little bit of trouble, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm excited for it. It'll be a good game for sure.
Yeah, and that's funny. We might have to. Well, I mean, we should just get him to call in and talk to Heckma himself. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'd definitely love to get on the phone with him. But hey, there's a couple of names that we got to talk about here now. Big Jack Dawson. Yep. Jack Dawson.
It's one of your favorites.
One of my favorites. One of the show's favorites.
Absolutely.
We love Jack Dawson.
He's a sweetheart.
He's our guy, right?
I've known Jack Dawson since he was a little
tyke.
Yeah, I mean, since he played Pee Wee football. My brother and him played Pee Wee football together.
Well, I'm telling you, it's going to be a family reunion tonight because Jack Dawson is going to be all about it. The thing about Lamar, and I think I was disappointed in them versus Arlington Martin. That was the one game that I thought Lamar was going to get, and they lost that game big. The speed is on the Lamar side, but for Bowie, it's just that team that has been playing people so tough. Their 1 losses to Rockwall. Everybody that comes out of a game with Bowie comes out with a little less of something. It just seems like it takes something off of your lifespan playing Arlington Bowie because they're such a tough team. They play. Say that again.
Junkyard dogs.
Absolutely, and that mentality is what they've had all year. Now, obviously, coming against Rockwall with Jackson Smith, and come on, man, it's one of those games that obviously they were not going to win that game. However, when you look at Lamar and all of the speed that they embody, if they could just put a game together. And that's what Lamar has in that one game versus Martin. I mean, 7-1, I say put a game together, but I'm saying against a contender because they're trying to solidify themselves. And Jack Dawson has been doing this for so long, man. This kid is a stud. And tonight I anticipate 2 7-1 teams. This is a heavyweight bout.
Well, and that's the thing is Lamar, they lose their game to Martin. And I know it was lopsided, but they lose that, and then everybody kind of just forgot about it.
That's what happens.
It's been about Martin, even Arlington High at times, and then Bowie. But it's like Lamar's still sitting right there. They had an 11-win season last year, 11 or 12 win. They're 7-1 this year, so it's not like they've just disappeared. No. They still got guys like Jack Dawson, Trevon West, who's the OU commit, who's a big play.
Trevon West is amazing, man. This kid's amazing.
Averages 20 yards a reception, so it's like
is that good?
That's pretty dang good.
It's a lot, right?
Yes, Kyle.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
And I want to say he was one of our next 25 guys.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so I mean they've got dudes, and I think this game is sneaky good just from a standpoint.
Can I tell you,
it's obviously
your
important.
next 25 list is clutch, bro.
Yeah?
I'm telling
you. A lot of things that guy does is clutch.
Yeah,
just saying.
this guy in general is clutch.
How about that?
But let's talk about the importance of this game from the standpoint of it could be a de facto or set up a de facto district championship next week with a Bowie win tonight with Martin. But obviously Lamar might have some other plans for all that stuff.
Absolutely. And when you look at it that way, I mean, if Bowie does come out with a win, then, like you said, de facto championship game next week, Bowie, and then...
And that's assuming Martin takes care of Pascal tonight.
Which
should happen.
We would assume happens.
Let's give the Pascal Panthers some respect.
Sure, but let's also give the respect that Martin deserves.
Yeah.
But at the same time, then you've got Lamar. I mean, like you said, Lamar's kind of been forgotten about after that loss to Martin earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and you expect him to lose to Bowie? I mean, it might not be. And this is a pick'em game later. We'll get deeper into this come around 6:55. But at the same time, I mean, if Lamar comes out with a win, it really provides an interesting look because you could have a three-way tie up at the top of that district should Bowie go in and beat Martin next week. So that would be an interesting one overall. But we'll keep an eye on this one. Of course, like you said, lots to do in District 4, 6A. And, Guy, we are extremely happy that you were in studio. You were going to go to Highland Park in Lancaster, but I've got you a solid replacement for that. And by solid, I mean the best in the business. Miles Dunklin, the voice of the Highland Park Scots, joins us on the phone. Let's preview that Highland Park and Lancaster game. This was a good game last year at Highlander Stadium. Now the Scots got to go on the road and take on Lancaster in hostile territory. Miles, thanks for joining us again here on Friday Night Stars. Glad to talk to you again, buddy. It's been way too long, but man, you've got a good one on the docket tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Always a pleasure to be on with you. And it's been a little bit of a weird year with the way the schedule's played out. Basically, a month of games that were non-competitive, where Chandler Morris hasn't played a third quarter really since the Lone Star game. I mean, you look at last week, he was 4 for 4 with 4 touchdowns. They just did not have a lot of resistance over the last month. But, boy, am I excited to be here at Tiger Stadium tonight. I know our very own Guy Frazier is a huge fan of the Lancaster Tiger band. Weibo Nation in general is just awesome. This might be my second favorite program not named Highland Park in the Dallas area. They're just a lot of fun, and they got a lot of talent, a lot of fun guys to watch, so it should be a good one.
Miles Dunklin.
There it is.
My man Heckma.
Hey, let me tell you something. My wife knows that that I'm definitely afraid of bears. She gets a really good – she just kick off of you tweeting.
I got to tag you in all the bear
Thank you. Thank you for
Twitter.
that, Miles. I'm sorry this isn't about high school football.
It's okay.
But Miles, hey, I got to get back to it, man. Obviously, just like we were talking about Arlington Lamar, loses one game. Everybody kind of jumps off of the bandwagon, don't think they're that good a team. You guys lose to a really solid Frisco Lone Star team and then go into some games where you're beating people by 80-2, right? And so there's no competition. And now, finally, an opponent comes into the stadium like Lancaster. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like the Scots they actually really like where they are at. They like that the rest of the state has kind of written them off after that Lone Star loss. They went so long with a big target on their back. They had won 33 consecutive games. They had the longest winning streak in the state. They had the home winning streak that everybody knew about. And without voicing it, they all wore that pressure, right? I mean, how can you not? Coaches and players alike when you've won 33 consecutive games. And I think that kind of let them get back to normal. And really, when they started this run in 2016, nobody expected anything of them. And they really like the position that they're in, where they can just go to work, and the Heckma Harrisons of the world no longer believe in them, and they like that. They like that kind of bulletin board material, and they really like the position that they are in within the rest of the state right now.
Okay, the Heckma Harrisons of the world. That's great.
There's not a lot of them, Miles. I'll tell you that right now. There's not a lot of Heckma Harrisons in the world.
Of the world. That's pretty good. Come on, ask your boy a question. I know it's your homeboy. You don't want to ask him nothing tough. Guy, come on, ask him something.
Hey, bring on the tough questions, guys.
I mean, I'm not really sure we've talked so much about it, but I mean...
You want me to ask him a question? You don't have to say nothing. This is just me and Miles.
I'll piggyback.
All right, bet. All right, so one of the things that I know about Chandler Morris, been watching this kid for 2 years now, and he's top of the food chain in North Texas as far as quarterbacks are concerned. Allen, the coach for Highland Park, I did a little research on these guys, looking at some of the formations that they have. They run 2 or 3 different plays out of 5 or 6 different formations. Chandler Morris, when you look at him and other quarterbacks in the state, he does something that's very unique, and he doesn't give away what he's doing. His pre-snap reads are impeccable. He doesn't do anything as far as, looking at anything that he's doing that would tell you that, hey, I'm throwing to this guy or whatever. Where does he get that from? Because very few quarterbacks that I look at, they're all kind of doing something that will let you know that they're about to run.
Well, in fact, I'll actually kind of flip it on its head there, that he actually does a really good job of finding out what the defense does before the play, because we all know the quarterback position is not just about catching and throwing the rock. There's a lot of subtleties about that position, and his pre-snap cadence and the way he's got a relationship with the center right now, Will Gibson, they're really able to, with a hard count, get the defense to show them what they're going to do. But really at Highland Park, there's no one alpha dog in that receiving core where, we all knew a couple of years ago if it was a 3rd and long that Kate Sawstad was the guy, right? But right now with Case Savage and Ben Smith on the inside, 2 really good players that helped them win the state championship last year, and then Paxton Anderson, the cousin of John Stephen Jones, is the other guy on the outside. But the X factor that the experts might not be completely aware of how good he is Drew Scott, number 7, who did not play against Frisco Lone Star. He's committed to play at Ohio State for lacrosse, but he is a 3-sport star. But they've just got so many weapons, Heckma, and this young offensive line is maturing. They play 4 juniors on the offensive line, that he's a guy that I think even more as the season goes along, I have a good relationship with the quarterback coach and Tristan Weber, as does Guy Frazier. And Tristan and I, we talk about Chandler's maturity level and his trusting the entire team and not trying to do too much. A punt can be a win sometimes on 3rd down and long. A check down can be a good option on a 3rd down and long. And I'll tell you what, Hunter Heath is averaging, fellas, he's averaging 14.9 yards per carry on the season. So that's a pretty good check down option, a guy that can take it to the house, a 4x100 sprinter. So he's just got a lot of options, and he's going to take what the defense gives him.
Miles, I'm going to flip this to the other side of the ball for Highland Park. Highlight a little bit of the defensive line, just the front 7 in general, and you think the importance that they'll have tonight against a Lancaster team that's obviously going to have a really good rush attack with Trey Bradford, DQ James, and Karan Neblett.
Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of Lancaster, and we could talk at length about the Tigers. Chris Gilbert, I know we all love him. He's one of my absolute favorites in the Metroplex, and we probably talked for 45 minutes on the phone earlier this week. He's an absolute gem. And one of the guys he pointed out that I don't think maybe a lot of people are aware of is Isaiah Pedock, number 97, who's about 6'3", 260 pounds. He's a mixed martial arts guy. He has big-time upside. Think Turner Cox, who's doing great things right now for the SMU Mustangs. But not only Pettick, okay, we all know about Prince Dorba, of course, headed to Texas. Houston Hummel, who transferred in from Jesuit, he's actually the team's leading tackler. And then this is a name to know going forward. Jack Curtis is a superstar in the making. His granddaddy played for the Green Bay Packers. He's a sophomore. He's 6'5", 225 pounds.
Wow.
He is Prince Dorba 2.0. I'm not trying to get too hyperbolic here, but this was a varsity track and baseball athlete as a freshman. He is starring in multiple roles for the Scots right now on the defensive line as a sophomore, and he's got big-time upside, Power 5 for sure, and people will be on him in the offseason. But that front seven really coming together. Patrick Turner, another really good player as well. They got a ton of now experience in the front seven, which is something they were lacking coming in because Prince Dorba was really the only guy that had played. I mentioned Curtis Pettick and Hummel, Andrew Washburn, another guy in there as well, but none of those guys had played varsity snaps. And so that Frisco Lone Star game, that was just game 3. And they've got really good assistant coaches at Highland Park. I think that's the main thing that maybe the state perspective misses is that these guys are not fully formed in week 1. They're not fully formed in week 8. They are improving every single week. And those guys with more experience have gotten a lot better. And now that defensive line, I think, can be just as scary as they were in 2016 when Turner Cox and those guys led them to the state championship.
No doubt about that. And Miles, we'll put you on the spot here. Who you got tonight? Give us a quick prediction. Who you got?
Who does he got?
Who I got? I got the Highland Park Scots. Okay, I got the Highland Park Scots. Look, guys, anytime you have the advantage at the quarterback position, to me that's huge. And the Scots are kind of that racehorse that has been in those upper echelon races. Not just this year, but year after year after year. And when they get to the Kentucky Derby, they're not outclassed. And they played those teams in the non-district. They're ready to go. They've been using, I mentioned those really good assistant coaches, even though they haven't played the best competition the last 4 or 5 weeks. They've been getting after it in practice. And as much as I like Lancaster, and I really do, I'm a big fan of their coaches and their kids, not just on the field, but as people as well. But I got Highland Park, and I got him by a couple scores.
There you go. Miles Dunklin joining us here on Whataburger Friday Night Stars. Always great to talk to you, Miles. We'll catch up with you maybe tonight after the game.
Holler at me. I'm always happy to talk with y'all. And by the way, great job, Mallory, getting in there. Great to see her getting some reps on Friday Night Stars.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Everybody's a fan of Mallory, including Miles. Miles, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Have a great call tonight, and we'll talk to him later. Let's talk to some of the individuals playing in the games themselves. We got a chance to catch up with both sides ahead of this monumental matchup.
You have to always think about them. They're 3-time defending champions, and they're a measuring stick, so it's definitely a point of interest.
Well, it's probably for the number 1 seed in the district championship, for sure, and so it'll be a great contest.
As our coach said, the game is big because we in it. But it's most definitely a game that we've been preparing for.
It's going to be a fun one. I mean, explosive offenses going at each other, good defenses as well. And for the district number 1 seed.
We ready. Them boy ready. Them boy ready, boy.
Love it.
God,
that's
them boys ready, boy. Them boys ready, boy.
No doubt about it. And we are now joined in studio by Nick Harris from the old coach.
Finally a professional.
Yeah, somebody professional in here overall. But Nick Harris joins us. What do you think about this game overall?
Oh, I'm excited for it. Lancaster, they've been ready for it this week, and I'm excited to see what they can bring to the table. They got a great home field advantage, I think, this week. I think they're going to bring a lot of fans to that stadium. Me and Guy were talking about it. The field is a long way from the stands in that stadium, but I think the fans will turn out. I think it'll still be a good one. I've been making bold predictions all year, so I may as well stick with it until the playoffs. So Lancaster by 6.
Ooh, tough one there.
I'm okay with that. I love
does that set you off a little bit?
No, because Coach Gilbert and that whole staff and Lorando, I talk to Karan almost daily. So those are my boys. It's all good.
Okay.
It's all good.
I'm just making sure.
I love Weibo. I'm just telling you, I think it might be the other way.
I see him crying behind the mask.
We'll make our predictions later. Yeah, we'll see it later. You can see it just kind of seething in the corner over there.
Y'all make me seethe.
Let's go to some of these other games. You were at a game last night, a pretty important one down south. Tell us a little bit about how impressed you were with Alvin Shadow Creek? Because you've just been raving about him since you entered the building.
Yes, absolutely. If we're talking pound for pound, the best teams in the state, with how they match up in their conference, Shadow Creek's the best team in the state. Their defense is.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
This is the team Highland Park defeated last year in the state championship game.
Whoa. See, Nick, why do you do that? Why do you come here? You drive. I don't know what you eat when you're in Houston. That when you get on 45 coming back up north, something happens to you, dog. Because before you go, your mind is cool. You got all your priorities in order, and then you go to Houston and you come back and it's all mixed up. What?
Shadow Creek is the best 5A team that I've seen this year. And I got to thinking about it on my drive up from Houston today.
There it is. That's it.
It was after I stopped at Buc-ee's, so that's where the food came from. It was in Madisonville. But they played Fort Bend Hightower last night, a really good team in their district. It was basically the district championship in that district down south, and they just completely overwhelmed them. It was supposed to be a pretty good game. I mean, Hightower's got some great skill players. They have Latrell Neville. He's about to commit here in a couple of weeks, 4-star wide receiver. And they got great skill players all around, like I said, but 52-3, it's just it wasn't a contest.
Now, Shadow Creek does have a few guys on their defense. They have some studs, from what I know.
Yeah, Alec Bryant's LSU commit on the defensive line, right next to a Kansas State commit on the defensive line. And their best defensive player, Xavier Alford's out the whole year with a knee injury, and they're still stepping in.
Who do they have at cornerback?
Some good guys.
Are they good?
Yeah, some good guys that have no games right now.
They got a guy right across the highway over at Marvin Mims. I'm telling you, that team, Shadow Creek, if they're as good as you say they are, they're going to throw holy water on that kid.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, Marvin Mims is the truth. You hadn't seen him yet, but you got to roll the tape.
But the kryptonite with Shadow Creek is going to be their offense. If they can produce like they did last night, no one's stopping them. But they've kind of had a couple of games this year where their offense didn't show up. They almost got caught last week against Richmond Foster, another really good team in that district. They only put up 24 points and came away with a 7-point victory.
Oh, so they have it all on defense, and then they struggle a little on offense.
Sometimes, not every game.
Not
every game.
Because I was going to ask you, what's your trust in Kyron Drones here in year one as far as him getting it done?
He really impressed me last night, and I'll be straight up. I didn't think he was the guy. And I showed up last night, and he was the best player in that game, 4 total touchdowns, and he's got the size to play that position effectively. I see him blowing up over the offseason, too, as far as offers go as well. But I see him leading that Shadow Creek team deep this year.
And so Xavier's out for the year?
We'll say yes. I asked him after the game. I said, any chance we see you in the playoffs? He kind of did one of those, and I was like, probably not. He's like, no, probably not.
Well, that's really big.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's at least something looking forward to Shadow Creek. I mean, that's a team that, we saw Highland Park have to face them last year in a state championship game, so it might be another matchup. Like you said, maybe it's a Lone Star, maybe it's somebody else, but definitely DFW has to look out for that Alvin Shadow Creek squad overall. Now, you've got a game just down the road you're going to tonight, Allen and Prosper. We're going to hear from Coach Schmidt here in just a little bit in our new installment of Coach Speak coming up on the top of the hour. However, give us your take on this game overall, and let's kind of go through and preview this game that's happening tonight.
Yeah, this was supposed to be a game of undefeated teams, but Prosper fell a couple weeks ago to Jesuit, so this game kind of lost its hype that it had maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. But I think there's still a reasonable chance that Prosper pulls off the upset. I give bold predictions. I'm not giving one here.
I was waiting on that one.
I'm not. Don't worry about it. It's Allen all the way, I think. But I think Prosper, if they can get their offense going, led by junior Jackson Berry, 21 passing touchdowns on the season. 9 of them to Hayden Metcalf, JT Lane at running back, 10 rushing touchdowns and almost 100 yards per game through 8 games. If they can get that offense going and keep up with Raylan Sharp and Selden Manning and those guys, maybe we see something, but I'm not going to call it.
Yeah, I'm gonna channel my inner Zach Walchuk, and that's disgusting to say, but nobody's gonna beat Allen. Allen is gonna roll in this game. We've been waiting on it for a while, and I've talked it up as well. JT Lane, I think he has. He's one of the great guys in that district as far as at running back. Jackson Berry's had an awesome year, but any chance that this game is at least close from a competition standpoint?
I think so.
I'd give it a close chance.
Yeah, they've got some dudes on that side.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, though, is this your first taste of Prosper this year?
This is my first taste of both teams.
Okay, because I've heard Prosper's a little bit more physically better this year than they were last year, but I've only heard that from a couple people, so I was kind of curious if you knew anything about that.
Led up front by Jake Majors, Texas offensive line commit. They're great in the trenches. I'm very excited to see the Prosper offensive line versus the Allen defensive line and see who kind of wins that matchup. And I'm really looking at Allen tonight to see, my evaluation of them before playoff time, because the Rockwall round 2 matchup is starting to look like it'll happen again.
Yeah.
So let's see the Allen secondary. Let's see what they can do against Hayden Metcalf. I mean, Hayden Metcalf is not a Jackson Smith, but, just kind of get a taste of, what they'll bring here in a couple of weeks and, when fun time rolls around.
Well, it's a little bit of a tune-up heading into that kind of stretch that you're going to have to see what that secondary has in store. And, overall, what Sharp brings to the table now, it seems like. Are you confident in him moving forward as really a leader for that ball club?
Yeah, and I like the kid. I think he's had a fantastic season when a lot of people doubted him preseason. I'm very curious to see how he can do against really good competition. I mean, I don't really believe that Allen has faced elite competition yet this season, so let's see when that rolls around. I mean, this will be a good telling game to be able to kind of, put him on that kind of weighting scale, but I don't think we'll really know until round 2.
Yeah, Prosperous. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to input that, Allen hasn't lost a regular season game since, 2011? So
2012, I believe, to Capel. Yeah, it's been a long time. They haven't lost a district game.
Are you about to make a bold prediction?
I can wait.
Do it.
They haven't lost a district game since 2010.
Yes. Yeah.
So
are you waiting till next week to make this prediction, or are you waiting until later in the show?
I think just by that stat that you kind of already know who I'm picking. It's Allen.
Any other games kind of intrigue you from around the area tonight?
I mean, the Highland Park Lancaster game, of course, and y'all covered the Lamar and Bowie one. I think that'll be fantastic.
It's gonna be a good
one
game.
of you said it could be the best game of the night. I think it was Kyle.
For sure.
I like that take. I think it could be. I think it could be a really good one out in Arlington. Overall, I think there's just a lot of playoff seeds to be determined this week. So after this week, we'll really get a good feel for what these first-round playoff matchups are going to be, and we can have fun on the drawing board next week on scenarios.
I got one for you. Mesquite Rockwall. It's an important game for seeding.
Yeah.
I kind of have my opinions on it. Kind of curious what yours are.
Yeah, y'all know I'm a Rockwall guy, so I'm going to take Rockwall. But I love Coach Fleener out at Mesquite. He's done a fantastic job. That program is way ahead of schedule, and they've battled so much adversity in the past 3 years. For that program to be in this position tonight to possibly knock off Rockwall and get that number 1 D1 seed, that's fantastic for that program. So, but I think Rockwall, I think they're finally getting back to that well-oiled machine that they can hopefully be for the playoffs. So I got Rockwall by a couple scores.
Well, there you go. Nick Harris from the Old Coach joining us here on Whataburger Friday Night Stars. Give us your prediction on Highland Park and Lancaster.
Lancaster by 6.
Oh, you did. That's right. Okay, let's go a different one. Let's do that. Okay, you already said Rob. Or did you give your prediction on every game that we've done so far?
No,
Lamar and Bowie. I did.
Okay, give us that one.
Okay.
How about that one? Let's do that.
I'll take Bowie. I'm sorry for the Harley family, but it's Bowie.
I hate to say it to you, Mom and Dad, but I'm taking Bowie.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That's tough.
Hey, she's not a Homer guy.
No.
Wow. Called
hey,
you out.
I love you. No. I just.
Hey, you can't be too sometimes. I'm not gonna lie.
This guy's all right. You see what he's doing?
Nick and I bust each other's balls all the time, so it's all good.
That's outstanding.
That was good.
Tell them where you can find you on social media moving forward as well.
Yeah, at Nick Harris TV tonight. I'll be at Allen Prosper Live Highlights. And on the Old Coach, we got a lot of games we're covering out tonight, so tune in to us. We're trying to give y'all some visuals tonight and get y'all some content during the week as well. So we're getting ready for playoffs. So, we got the fleece jacket on.
Those look nice.
I got the joggers on. It's cold season. It's football season now.
It's definitely cold. I had to be careful last night. So I could get the interview without shaking so bad. So I had to calm down a little bit. But yeah, you need to wear a thick jacket if you're going to
Luckily,
these
it's
games
warmed
tonight.
up a little bit today. It's 60 compared to what you had to deal with last night.
It was like 30 degrees.
Yeah.
It
when
was crazy.
When that sun goes down, though,
it gets cold.
But that's the thing about Texas high school football that I don't think anyone ever puts into the equation. With the weather, the way that it changes here, you got a lot of rain and wet weather going
it's
on.
Hot one weekend and it's cold the very.
But that's what I'm saying. When you look at teams, you look at these teams that have a bunch of fast guys, and you get them in a cold condition.
Yeah, they're not used to it. For sure.
Absolutely not. And that's not me being a tropical brother myself. I don't want
I like that.
put
tropical brother.
put me in a cold condition, and you'll see the truth. I mean, but look, that's the thing about Texas high school football. I said like last week when we looked to the DeSoto loss to Mansfield Summit. The great equalizer is the weather, and so those are some of the things when you talk about going forward that's going to play a large part in some of these victories, because some of your teams that are fast track offense is killing it. That weather is gonna impede, all of that.
No doubt about it, and it's going to be a factor tonight. Potentially, have fun out at Allen, and Prosper should be a fun environment and a good game overall. We'll see if Prosper can pull off something special.
We'll see. I'm taking that game over Highland Park Lancaster. I'm covering that one instead, I'm taking a risk.
You get to go to a nice, beautiful facility, though.
Yeah, that is true. I haven't been there yet. Yeah.
Beautiful stadium. But Nick Harris joining us here from the Old Coach. Always great having you. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
Appreciate it.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have a conversation sitting down with Coach Schmidt from the Prosper Eagles ahead of their matchup with the Allen Eagles, the Battle of the Eagles. I just realized that. Going into tonight's matchup, Brian Sutcliffe sits down with the head coach of Prosper when we return on Whataburger Friday Night Stars.
Billy Martin. I'm an executive vice president with North Dallas Bank and Trust. It's about authentic intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. At local banks like North Dallas, we give you personalized service that you just can't get at the big banks. Everything we do is driven by your best interest. We call it having a high YQ or U quotient.
It's in all of us, and we won't hold it back, not one little bit. Nope, we embrace it, letting it fuel our passions, pushing us deeper than we thought possible and keeping us curious. It's what sets us apart from the herd. It's how we come up with the ideas that make people say, why didn't I think of that? See, when you nurture the creativity and passion that's in all of us, you'll learn nothing is out of reach.
Ashley Home Store, the #1 furniture and mattress store in America. We have all the major mattress brands at a guaranteed low price. Plus, we have furniture for every room in the house and decorator accessories to make it yours. With multiple locations, personalized service from knowledgeable associates, and convenient finance plans to fit your budget. Ashley Home Store, the official furniture store of the Dallas Cowboys. This is home.
Days are built on mornings, and Whataburger is built on burgers. Mornings, burgers. Morning burgers? Yeah, all right. Good thing there's a burger made just for breakfast, topped with breakfast. Good thing there's the new limited time breakfast burger at Whataburger.
Week 10 of Texas high school football here from the Star in Frisco. Kyle Yeomans for Whataburger Friday Night Stars. And one of the biggest games tonight, Allen at Prosper. The Prosper Eagles losing a couple weeks ago to the Jesuit Rangers in surprising fashion takes a little bit of the muster away from this monumental matchup. But Prosper still has a lot to prove. And Brian Sutcliffe had an opportunity to sit down with Prosper's head coach, Coach Schmidt, in our edition of Coaches Speak from Prosper.
What would you say is the definition of success for you as a high school football coach?
First and foremost, having kids who graduate
and become better people than they were when they came into our program as freshmen or when they moved into Prosper or whatever the case may be. I think that's the most important thing is helping these kids grow and develop so that when they graduate from Prosper High School, they are better people than when they came in. The second part of that is just watching them get better every day, whether it's academically, whether it's athletically, just watching these young men get better every day. And then lastly, I just want them to come every day and have fun. Ultimately, at the end of the day, these kids play football because it's fun. And I want it to be a fun, positive experience for them.
You find that every good story starts at the beginning. So you are the son of a coach. What did you see growing up that told you this was the line of work you wanted to pursue?
Going back to as long as I can remember, I was in a field house, I was in a locker room, I was on a bus on Friday night going to a football game. And so for me, growing up, that was just the lifestyle that I lived in, and just being around that environment, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I loved being around the high school football team and just the atmosphere that it provided for me as a kid. Those high school football players at whatever school my dad was coaching at were my role models. I looked up to those guys and ultimately wanted to be in those guys' shoes one day. And so for me, athletics has always been a big part of my life, and getting into high school and college, and then of course after college, I always knew that this is what I was going to do.
So you jumped around Texas in various communities as the son of a coach. What were some of the communities that you grew up in?
Predominantly Victoria. My late elementary and middle school years were spent in Victoria. My dad was a coach at Victoria High School. And then from there, we moved to Lamarck, where I went to 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. Fortunate to be a part of some very successful football teams there. So those years, really third grade, second grade through my senior year in high school were spent in Victoria and Lamarck.
What were some of the things that you observed in your dad as an assistant coach that you've taken and incorporated into your career?
The relationships that he developed and built with kids. That's what I wanted to be able to do as a coach. The fun he had. It's a profession where you put in a lot of time and effort and energy, but it's also very rewarding. You're not, for me, I never envisioned myself going to work every day and putting a suit and tie on and sitting behind a desk all day. This is something that as coaches we're passionate about, and at the end of the day, it's fun, and we do enjoy it. Otherwise, we wouldn't put in the time that we do. And so just the relationships that I saw him build and develop with kids, and then just the enjoyment that I saw out of him when he went to work every day.
What would you say is among the highlights of your career as a football coach, whether as a head coach or any of your stops as an assistant?
In Cedar Park in 2012, we won a state championship. Obviously, that's a pretty big deal. And there's a whole lot of really exceptional coaches in the state of Texas who don't get an opportunity to play in or win a state championship game. And we won it in 2012. We played for it again in 2014 and got beat by Ennis. So obviously that, my first win as a head coach, just being around our kids every day. I love, being a head coach now. Being a head coach is so much different from being a position coach, but just the time that I spent as an offensive line coach was just unbelievable. I think offensive line coaches and their offensive linemen have a special relationship and a special bond, and so for all those years where I was an offensive line coach, just enjoying those days every day. There's just, so many wonderful things over these first 19 years. A lot of things that I look back on, and I'm just, glad they happened, and just a lot of fun.
There are a lot of responsibilities that you have as a head football coach, and you've got a team full of fantastic assistants that are probably handling a lot of the day-to-day stuff. How do you stay close to what's going on with every area of your team as the leader of what is essentially an organization like any other business?
That's right. For me, first and foremost, I want to, going from an assistant coach to a head coach, I wanted to work to try to maintain the relationships that I had with the kids prior to being a head coach. I think as a head coach, it's easy to get stuck in your office, whether it's answering emails or phone calls or taking care of just the day-to-day paperwork that you have to do, sending rosters or whatever else the case may be. So for me, the most important thing was just staying close to the kids. That was really my biggest thing, and that was the thing I wanted to make sure happened. was just staying close to those kids.
What do you think you'd have done for a living if you weren't a football coach?
Never another option.
That's good. No. That's a blessing, right? To have a really clear purpose.
You know, I grew up in that environment. I love that environment. So it was awesome. You know, I played high school football. You know, went to Sam Houston State, played football, and this is just what I was. It's what I was put here to do.
So how would Brandon Schmidt, the coach, have coached what was a 3-year letterman at Sam Houston State? How do you think Coach Schmidt would have handled player Schmidt?
You know, I like to think I was. I like to think that I was a pretty easy guy to coach. You know, for me, I wasn't. You know, I was an offensive lineman, so I was limited athletically already. I wasn't very big, so I had to learn to play with great technique. I had to be smart. And so I would like to think it was not the most difficult task to coach me. I knew I had to be coachable. I knew I had to do exactly what I was told to do, or I wouldn't get to play. Now I've taken my fair share of butt chewings in my life, so I was not immune to that either.
What were the things that you took? I'm sure you had dozens of coaches in your career coming up the ranks. Yeah. What were some of the things that you took from those interactions that you had with a bevy of coaches that you said, this is maybe something that I would want to do a little bit differently, and that you've taken advantage of now?
You know, I've been fortunate enough to play for and work for some tremendous coaches, and it's exactly what you said. I think you take the good from the coaches when you see the good, and you also see the bad, and you go, that's not something that I want to do. I think first and foremost is the kids got to know you care about them before they will take coaching from you. Before you can get onto a kid, that kid's got to know that you care about him and you're truly there to help him out. You know, in whatever aspect of life it is. But you better have a relationship with that kid before you start to coach him.
What's the hardest thing you've had to do as a high school football coach?
I don't know. You know, there's just things that happen. You know, whether it's a kid who leaves the program, or whether it's we make mistakes too. You know, as much as we don't like to admit it, we make mistakes, and sometimes you make that mistake and you don't do the right thing by a kid. And I think those are the hard times. Is when you messed up. So yeah, there's definitely some bad that comes with all the good.
So this is your first head coaching job. It was a somewhat unique opportunity. You came to the program in 2015 with Coach Chris Ross, who left after 1 year for a fantastic opportunity at Boise State. A lot of coaches get their first job in maybe a smaller community, a smaller program. You are catapulted into a position at Prosper. Huge community, one of the fastest growing communities anywhere in the state. Beautiful new facility now, program moving up into the highest classification. There's a lot that goes with that. Yeah. Did you feel ready for that job when you moved into it?
You know, when you talk to people about, being a head coach, people who are coordinators, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, the people who I've coached with in the past who are coordinators, they all say, well, I'm not ready. And you never think you're ready. And you're not until you get put in that situation and you see all of the new hats that you have to wear on a day-to-day basis. And you know what? Some of it you're really confident about. The football aspect of it, that's just you keep doing what you've been doing. I have a great coaching staff, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of new roles that you have to take on that either you haven't had to do before or you didn't know existed, and that part of it is challenging.
So you're not a prolific user of social media, right? You use it at appropriate cadence and very appropriate things, very inspirational messages, and wanting to keep folks apprised of what's going on in the district. Yeah. But you recently retweeted a statement, and I want to read this and get your thoughts on it. Yeah. Was that too many kids have been taught that the goal of high school sports is to achieve an athletic scholarship. Mm-hmm. But here's the truth. The goal of high school sports is to learn how to be a better person, a better teammate, a better communicator, and to enjoy being a teenager. Mm-hmm. Something you just can't get back. Why do you think the goals have become blurred in that way?
I think that, a lot of it I think has to do with social media. A lot of it has to do with, so-and-so down the street, he got a D1 offer, or, you see it on social media. I think it's competitive between kids. I think it's competitive between parents. I think it has become a status symbol for kids and parents to get a college offer or a college scholarship. And that's just something that for me, I don't agree with. I think the goal of high school athletics is it's what you read, it's to teach kids. My number one goal for our kids at Prosper High School is for them to graduate and be better people when they leave than when they came in. And that's our responsibility. At the end of the day, the vast majority of our kids, regardless of what sport it is, the vast majority of our kids aren't going to participate in athletics at the college level. And I think we better understand that. That our goal is not to raise athletes, our goal is to raise young men. And so, I just think these kids, they see social media and they see, well, my buddy, my friend, down in Frisco or up in Salina or whatever, well, he got an offer and I didn't get an offer. And it's a shot at the ego. And vice versa, when I do get an offer, it's also positive for my ego. And I think through social media, we're detracting from kids. When they don't get that offer and they feel bad about themselves, or they're getting an overinflated opinion of themselves when they do get that offer. But as high school coaches at any school, that's not our job. That's not our role. Our role is to make sure that kids graduate with the tools they need to be successful after they leave Prosper High School.
And what are the things that tell you that you've been successful in that way? How do you assess and tell that a young man has evolved in that way as he's moved through your program?
I think it's a number of things. You track, just their growth from a maturity standpoint, from 8th grade through 12th grade, and what are those kids doing? What are those kids doing academically? What are they doing in the community? If you see a kid who, maybe as an 8th grader, 9th grader, got into a little bit of trouble, has he grown? And is he, when he's a junior and a senior in high school, is he grown up and matured and he's not doing those things anymore? Is he ultimately going to be a happy, productive member of society? That's what we're looking for, and that's what we want to see out of our kids after they graduate from high school.
Always great getting to talk and sit down with Coach Schmidt. Of course, Prosper taking on Allen in a monumental matchup tonight. Brian Sutcliffe also doing magnificent work. We may talk to him during the overtime show, pending on how that one shakes out. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Professor Diggs joins the show, and we'll talk about some of the playoff scenarios surrounding Week 10 of Texas high school football. We'll be back in a moment.
Gear up for Back to Sport at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
It's game day. A day that should be spent in the living room, not the kitchen. So next game, you just worry about the score, because we've got the food covered. With hand-battered, cooked-to-order, always fresh, never, ever frozen chicken fingers, craveable cane sauce, crispy crinkle-cut fries, and jugs of freshly made tea and lemonade. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, one love.
Go Cowboys!
It's in all of us, and we won't hold it back. Not one little bit. Nope, we embrace it, letting it fuel our passions, pushing us deeper than we thought possible and keeping us curious. It's what sets us apart from the herd. It's how we come up with the ideas that make people say, why didn't I think of that? See, when you nurture the creativity and passion that's in all of us, you'll learn nothing is out of reach.
Get excited, Whataburger fans. Our one-of-a-kind mushroom Swiss burger is back.
And now it's an all-time favorite.
If you love mushrooms, you're going to love this burger.
The double cheese, the mushrooms was absolutely amazing.
It's a really good balance between the mushrooms and the Swiss. That au jus sauce on top.
The creamy au jus sauce.
It really complements the mushrooms. Everything just works perfectly together.
It's just perfect. Every bite's perfect.
It's not just a mushroom Swiss burger, it's a Whataburger mushroom Swiss burger.
here for Week 10 of Texas high school football. So glad you've joined us here on Whataburger Friday Night Stars on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Vimeo. Be sure to give us a like, a share, a follow. Always love to grow the show. We're trying to start a new hashtag. Hashtag
Grow
Watch
the show.
FNS is the new hashtag. And, of course, we love having guests on the show. We've been riddled with them so far. We had Miles Dunklin on. We had Nick Harris. We had Coach Schmidt and Brian Sutcliffe. Now we've got, quite possibly, at least here in Week 10 and Week 11, the most interesting guest you can ever have on a Texas high school football show. It's Professor Diggs and his knowledge of Texas high school football playoff scenarios and the way that things will shake out is unmatched. And we get a chance to kind of dig into that a little bit, no pun intended. How's it going, Professor Diggs? Uh-oh.
I was about to say that intro needs a smoke machine.
It was good, right?
That was
was a good
awesome.
intro.
I was like, why don't I get introduced like that? What's up with that?
It's interesting. I don't hear Professor Diggs, but even if that's the case, we'll get him coming on here in just a minute. There you are. I hear something. Are you there, Professor Diggs?
I'm here.
There it is. Hey, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good. How y'all doing?
Doing well. Are you excited about Week 10 and 11? I mean, this is your time to shine.
It is fun. I mean, when you get into all of this, and not only that, I heard y'all talk. My boy Nick Harris talking a little bit about first-round playoff matches, second-round playoff matches, Alvin Shadow Creek state final games. It is fun when we can start projecting some of the good games that could be happening in a week or two.
I literally thought Guy was going to be the first one to ask a
I
question.
thought so too. I was kind of waiting on Guy here.
Okay, well, Diggsy, let's talk about something. Explain to me what you were talking to me about, on Twitter with Wiley and their whole playoff scenario with Prosper and where they would play.
Well, my understanding, and I'm not going to say I am the biblical authority when it comes to this, but my understanding is the higher seed in the district gets the home game. Now, as we know, we break off the Division I, Division II. So theoretically, a third-place team who is the first seed could play a second-place team who is the second seed, because if it's the first place and second place are D1 and the third place and fourth place are D2, then you could have a higher district seed playing a lower district seed, and then in that case, that they wouldn't get the automatic home game. But Wiley is looking like a second-place finisher in that district. So if Wiley ends up in second place in that district, they will get the home game against Prosper, unless Prosper somehow, maybe defeating Allen tonight, which nobody thinks will happen. But if that did happen, then they might get into a tie for second place. Then they might have to go play at a neutral site if they're both second place teams. So my understanding of it is you have to have the higher district seed and the higher seeding. And if you got both, you get the home game. And right now, Wiley's looking like they have that.
Well, that would be huge for them. Okay, very good to know.
Hey, Professor Diggs, Heckman Harrison here. I want to tell you that it's safe in the studio for you. Zach Walchuk is not here. You don't have to worry about losing dinner or anything like that, unless you got something for me. Because I'm gonna run the tab up if you lose a bet to me.
I've been refinancing my student loans, getting ready
You better
to go
do
have
it.
dinner
You
with
better
Zach.
do it. You better do it. Professor Diggs, I got something for you, man. Now, I read an article earlier. I thought it was very disrespectful of the Dallas Morning News, man. This is they wrote an article about the Avoid Duncanville Bowl between SGP and DeSoto. Did you read that?
I saw a little bit about it. Why do you think it's disrespectful?
Oh, man, because they can't. Come on now. What do you mean? They put
Do
their
you
pants
want
on
to see
just
DeSoto
like
play
us.
Duncanville in the first round?
Absolutely. That's how, how do you get your clout? That's how you get your respect. How you going to get your street cred? You go in and you beat a Duncanville. That's what you do.
Wouldn't you rather see that in the fourth round, though?
Yes. No, I would, but at the same time, to write an article that said the Avoid Duncanville Bowl, seriously?
Hey, we got some Avoid all kinds of things. I think next week we're going to have Saxe versus Rowlett in the Avoid Allen Bowl. So I think they're creating a whole new marketing.
I can't believe you buying into that. I can't believe that, Professor Diggs. Nobody ever takes you to task on this. Diggs, are you serious? The Avoid Duncanville Bowl. Nothing about that says, wow.
There have been teams that have been known to throw football games to get a longer playoff route. I mean, last year we saw it with District 12, and Guy could probably talk a little more about that, where teams were throwing games, putting JV in there to get a little bit of a better playoff route. So it happens, for sure.
And I think winning is a habit, so I think that's never the right route to go. I think, just going out there and playing the opponent you have in front of you is always the better route to go.
Well, and you mentioned the Temple very briefly. I mean, that's a perfect example of it. You throw a game late in the season that you absolutely should have won, and then you turn around and you lose in the first round of Mesquite Horn already. So, I mean, it works both ways, and of course, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't overall.
Hey, Professor Diggs, Mallory Hartley here, Zach's replacer, so that makes it any better. I want to hear some of your projections on District 4-6A. I'm a big fan of this district, and I just want to know, do you think it's going to be a three-way tie between Lamar, Martin, and Bowie, or is there going to be a sole leader in this district?
I think we're going to have a clean district in District 4-6A, and really the big games that matter because you're going to have Lamar and Martin. They are your D1 schools, and then Arlington and Bowie are your D2 schools. So those are going to be the games that matter. We already know that Bowie beat Arlington, so Bowie's going to be slotted over Arlington unless crazy things happen, like if Fort Worth Pascal doesn't get their respect, like Guy was talking about, some crazy things like that. And then Martin versus Lamar, when you have those elements happening, and Martin's already beat Lamar, I think that's pretty much set. So I think you got Martin as your D1-1, Lamar as your D1-2, and then Bowie as your D2-1, and Arlington as your D2-2. But what we don't know is what's going to happen in District 3-6A, because everything is crazy over there right now, and this week's going to have a lot to kind of suss out a little bit of what's going to go on in 3-6A to find out who those teams are going to play. But it's crazy after Haltom beat Trinity that Haltom is now perhaps not even going to make the playoffs.
Now,
it's crazy in that district.
Is District 3-6A the craziest district overall? Because I'm looking at it as well, and that's the only district that I see where it says clinched a playoff berth, 0 teams. Clinched or has been eliminated, 0 teams. Literally everyone in the district is up for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and when LD Bell can be playing some meaningful football in November, it is fun times. Absolutely, this is one of the craziest districts in the Metroplex. I know Garland has been a little crazy, but I think it's kind of sorted itself out after Wiley beat North Garland last night. So there are so many things that could happen in District 3-6A. Every team is still on, as you mentioned. They can still make it to the playoffs. I still think you got Trinity as kind of your definite. They clinched tonight after Abilene. Richland versus Weatherford, the winner of that game is in. I'm going to take Weatherford in that game. Then you're going to have Haltom against LD Bell. Loser is out. I think Haltom can still make the playoffs if they win out, but it's going to be a tough road for them.
That's unbelievable that, like you said, Haltom, the team that took down the giant of Trinity a couple weeks ago, could be missing the playoffs. And before we let you go, Professor Diggs, give us a couple games tonight to kind of look for in terms of playoff scenarios that you're excited about, because maybe it's a little off the radar or out of the radar, but what are some things that you have your eyes on?
Well, one thing that's actually tomorrow morning, so you won't get to have a chance to talk about it, but I think it's one of the best stories that nobody's really talking about. Fort Worth Northside against Fort Worth Poly. And you might hear that game. I might see Heckma rolling his eyes right now, like Northside, Poly, what's going on there? Northside has not made the playoffs since 1979. Can you imagine not making the playoffs in 40 years? I'm 41. I'm getting old. So when I was 1, they played in the playoffs against McKinney in the first round and lost. And they have not made the playoffs since then. And if they can beat Fort Worth Poly tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. football game, they make the playoffs. So I think that's a story that nobody's really talking about that I think is an absolute fun one to cover. And then, so many different things. Last week one of the big upsets was Mesquite Poteet. They lost to West Mesquite, so kind of figuring out what's going to happen there. West Mesquite plays Sherman this week. I have Sherman as a favorite in that game, but if West Mesquite can somehow knock off Texas or somehow knock off Sherman and then knock off Texas High, we might be talking about a world where Mesquite Poteet doesn't even make the playoffs. And that is a absolutely crazy scenario if they get into some tiebreakers with West Mesquite having such a big victory over them. So I'm keeping an eye on that district as well tonight.
Professor Diggs joining us here on Whataburger Friday Night Stars. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon because like we talked about, it's your time to shine and you're always active on Twitter. Go follow Professor Diggs on the Twitter sphere. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time.
Thanks for having me.
There he goes, Professor Diggs. Always a pleasure to have Professor Diggs on the phone or in studio. He's one of my favorite guys to talk to, just a wealth of knowledge. And he pulled out that Fort Worth matchup, and that's a game I haven't even looked at. But that's unbelievable. I mean, it's been 40 years since they've made the playoffs, and they can do it with a win.
And Northside used to be a really prideful program way back in the early days of Fort Worth ISD ball. And so for the Steers to find their way maybe back into postseason play would be really cool and just a good story for Fort Worth ISD in general.
No doubt about it. Let's go into some of these Friday games because we're running a little bit behind, so it's going to be rapid fire all the way through these games today. But starting with Birdville and Colleyville Heritage, a 4-5A Division I matchup. Birdville sitting at 6-2. Colleyville Heritage at 5-3 in playoff contention. This is a pretty important matchup in terms of seeding overall. Two teams kind of sitting underneath Denton Ryan in that district.
Right, and 4-5A, this is as big as it gets tonight. If you look at Colleyville Heritage, it's a very intriguing team. You look at the 3 losses that they have. All of the losses that they have are to teams that have 2 of them are undefeated and 1 team only has 1 loss, right? So, and that's Euless Trinity. Mm-hmm. So, which Colleyville Heritage team is going to show up? What we're looking for, and of course, like you said, Kyle, Denton Ryan is atop of that division, and no one is going to take them down. But when tonight's game, it's one where Stone Earl is going to have a lights out game. You realize that Ladarius Mixon doesn't look like he's coming back. He's obviously dealing with some type of injury, but Damari Walker has definitely filled in perfectly for him. He has 735 yards and 10 touchdowns. That's awesome, right? But Colleyville Heritage is a pass-first team. You know that's what they want to do. They want to air you out. But they do realize that at a team like Birdville, you're going to have to milk some of that clock. And they have 2 guys in Ash and Shabay, my player of the week last week. Yeah, Isaac, it's sophomore kid. He's awesome. But these 2 are going to be one of the reasons that I believe that Coach Joe Willis comes into this game scheming to keep Stone Earl drinking Gatorade.
Okay.
And make him a spectator.
Well, and I think Colleyville is kind of a sneaky team in this game. Personally, I have Birdville winning it. I'll just go out and say that just to line up with my projections.
Yeah, let's just give the spoiler to the prediction games.
Well, but hang on. Well, I didn't realize it was a prediction game, but
it is.
Well, okay, my bad. But that's my pick. But I will say this is a really important game from a seeding standpoint. The winner of it gets the 2nd seed most likely, and the loser gets the 3rd seed.
Yeah.
And that matters because if you get that 2 seed, you have to go out west, and you'll play in El Paso and Amarillo School. Much easier than potentially getting Abilene Cooper in the 2nd round. Number 9 team in 5A D1 right now.
So you're saying the loser of this game?
The loser would hurt quite a bit, I think. So, yeah, I think this is a key game because Denton Ryan is what they are in 4-5A D1, but these next 2 spots are kind of important. So,
yeah, and you look at Birdville, I mean, a team that's already clinched a playoff berth, and Colleyville Heritage is not there yet, but they can clinch it with a win or with a Denton loss tonight, and they're in. So it's win and you're in for Colleyville Heritage. Looking to kind of continue a hot streak a little bit going into that 4-5A matchup. Let's go down to the private school ranks. Taps Bishop Lynch. What a win last week over Bishop Dunn. 43-15, and then on the other side you've got Prestonwood Christian, who was waxed by Parish Episcopal. 2 teams going in different directions in this one. Just kind of a game that you wouldn't necessarily look at, but you look at Switzer in terms of Prestonwood Christian and what he's been able to do. 66 completions and 125 attempts, 7 touchdowns, and 830 yards on the year. That's not necessarily the stat line you would expect from Switzer. Their attack is on the ground. You've got that tailback in Holmes with 6 touchdowns on the year, over or almost 6 yards per carry for Holmes. So we'll see if that Prestonwood squad can kind of pick things up after their loss last week to Parish. 44-19 was that score last week.
Yeah, that was it says every loss is a bad loss, but last week
that was a bad loss.
That was a bad loss.
Yeah, were you all surprised by the margin in that?
Yes, very much so. I thought that I definitely thought the Prestonwood would play a better game than that. But I guess that game last week showed us actually how good Parish Episcopal's defense is.
Yeah.
And so we know what they do at quarterback, and then my cousin Evan Green, Mr. Show out doing his thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna go against the family. Mallory.
Well.
I'm not going to go against the family. But at the same time, you look at Bishop Lynch last year, we were counting them out.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't saying anything good about those guys because they were losing to everybody and they were kind of stringing some wins together. And then you look up at state finals, they're the state champions. They're the state champion, and we're all looking at each other like, how did they get there? And so looking at Prestonwood, I mean, I think it would be premature to count them out. They're 6-2, and they have everything to play for. So, I mean, I believe that that Prestonwood can get it back going.
And the Switzer is Barry's grandson?
Yeah, and he's actually not playing tonight.
Okay.
I didn't know that going into it, but no Switzer tonight for Prestonwood Christian, so they're having to replace their quarterback, which is tough, especially against a team like Bishop Lynch that continues to put up good numbers, at least last week. Let's go back to the 6A ranks. District 6 6A, Coppell and Flower Mound, two teams that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be in a crucial matchup in terms of playoff seeding at this point. You kind of thought Flower Mound was going to continue to run this district. You thought Coppell was at least going to be right there in playoff contention. Well, Coppell's in some trouble, boys.
Yeah.
Or girl. Sorry.
That's okay.
That's weird. I haven't had to do that yet.
Boys, I'm like,
sorry, Mallory. I apologize.
Well, there's always a first.
There is a first.
Exactly. No, I was just going to say that Flower Mound's pretty hungry for a win. They lost to the number 1 ranked 6A Marcus Flower Mound last week in a heartbreaking loss, 34-31. So they're definitely going to be on edge tonight. They're going to have that kind of that adrenaline. They're going to definitely show out, I think, tonight. Also, Coppell's fairly new to 6A, if that's correct, Guy. I'm sure that you know a little bit. Yeah,
right.
They haven't played these. They haven't been able to meet up as much as some of these other teams have. Kind of like Bowie and Lamar. They've met quite a few times, yeah, for sure. But Flower Mound did win last year, 31-17, and so I think it'll be a good game for sure.
Yeah, we're going to have to see which Flower Mound team is going to show up tonight.
That's kind of where I was leading.
That's the thing, because I don't know how to trust them and what to do with them. And
it's amazing because last year they were the darling of 6A, and we talked about them every week. I mean, they were rolling. They were a team that we were not expecting to be as good as they were.
And then you look up and they won the district.
Exactly. And now Coppell, defense galore. You know that they were looking for a quarterback. They didn't find out throughout this season. And so both of these teams, it just seems like this is that one game where the winner of this game just kind of could take a proverbial deep breath and say, all right, we got a little something here. But for Flower Mound, I believe this is as close to a must-win game as any.
Well, you've got Flower Mound at 3-2 on the year. You've got Coppell at 2-3. You win the game if you're Coppell. You're evened up at 3-3. Of course, you've still got to take care of business next week, but it keeps you alive. If you're Coppell, you lose this game, you might be done.
Oh no, it's a must.
I think it's absolutely a must.
In fact, I would go out and say that this game tonight gets that 4th spot for 6A. I mean, assuming how things maybe go next week, but Coppell has to win this game, and really Flower Mound too. I mean, yeah,
it goes both ways.
It goes both ways, to be quite honest. So
yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say. I mean, even with like Flower Mound's quarterback, Blake Short, he's got over 2,000 total yards in this season so far and 22 touchdowns. I mean, with a quarterback like that,
Pierce Hudgens, your boy.
He's balling.
He is balling.
Yeah, so just say it like that.
He's balling. I mean,
that's what it is.
Can Coppell's defense really shut him down? I mean, that's going to be the key to this game, but I don't know.
That's going to be a huge key. They're going to have to find a way to hold Blake Short to at least something pedestrian tonight in order to give themselves an opportunity. Let's go back to District 5-5A Division I. They've got a couple crucial matchups tonight in that district, starting with Frisco Independence and the Colony. Frisco Independence and the Knights, 6-2 on the year, have really kind of found their footing over the last couple of weeks. They had that blowout loss to Lone Star, had that drop game to Frisco Heritage and a weird forfeit, but then you take down Wakeland by 10 and you squeak one out against Little Elm on the road. But now you've got probably the toughest test of the year other than Lone Star for Independence, and that's the Colony. Can anybody name a quarterback matchup better than this one tonight in the area? I mean, Braylon Braxton against Mikey Harrington, each quarterback over 2,200 yards and 28 touchdowns each.
Right.
I mean, it's unreal what these quarterbacks have been able to do numbers-wise.
Well, and they're two guys that have really improved a lot since last year. They had their moments last year, but this year they've been really consistent and been kind of the drivers of their team. And this is a really important one. And one thing I'm looking for with the Colony is, can they finally play defense for one game, just consistently all the way throughout the game? And I mean, they've kind of locked up that second spot for that district for playoffs, but this is a really important game with Independence as far as, when they had to forfeit that game a couple weeks ago and it kind of let Heritage back in the door. And so now you've kind of got that mess there at the bottom with Heritage, Wakeland, Independence, and Centennial. But as far as quarterback play, there's other guys. There's good receivers in this game. You got Christian Gonzalez, who plays both ways for the Colony.
Miles Price, of course.
Miles Price, who's Heckma's boy. And
everybody's boy.
Yeah, he's just good.
Talk about balling.
But no, it's a really important game for this district. And really, for me, I just want to see the Colony go out there and play 4 quarters with some solid defense, and they need that going into playoff season.
This is that game that I can hear Eric Chiafalo's voice right now. He's just
like the voice of God.
Mikey Harrington is going to go in. He gets excited about a game, but this is that game. I look at this. I looked at both of these teams versus Frisco Lone Star. I thought that was a good test for both of them. The Colony obviously played them the toughest.
Right.
The Colony has speed galore in this game. It's going to come down to who can get a stop, who has the better defense, and I believe that Independence does, not by default though, on this one, because the Colony can put up a ton of points. Now, Wafer, who's going to be able to stop this kid? I don't know. Who's going to be able to stop Miles Price? So I guess that when it comes down to it, Braylon Braxton is the one part of this game that I think that if Braylon Braxton just has that lights out, dominates in this game, there's no way that Independence loses.
Okay.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way.
Wow.
Well, it's a huge game for them. They get that win, and they pretty much solidify, I think, that third spot.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of up to Centennial, Wakeland, and the Heritage to kind of figure out how they want to finish this whole deal.
But Independence is a good team. Independence has been a good team, and aside from the controversy that they had by losing 2 games in one night, they have
put them in a hard spot.
Yeah, they've overcome a lot of adversity.
Right.
Yeah, and speaking of Wakeland overall, you look at Frisco Wakeland and Frisco Centennial. That's another crucial matchup in that district overall. And Wakeland kind of reeling a little bit. They've lost 2 in a row. Centennial has been in some wild games before they fell to number 1 Lone Star last week, 62-10. This game still holds a lot of weight in that district overall, in District 5. Or District 7, 5A rather. But you look overall at some of these squads, and you shouldn't have Centennial in the mix. And Guy, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, talking about the forfeit and kind of how that kind of made a mess at the bottom of that district. But Centennial, a team at least 3 weeks ago or so, we probably wouldn't even have said would have been in the mix at all.
Yeah. No, not at all. And same with Heritage. They've
That's fair.
Both those squads, and yet they've gotten in the mix and really just sat there and said, no, we're going to fight for this 4th spot. And it seems like this district kind of has this mess every year. And I think that just shows the competitive balance across the district. I think you've got Lone Star and then everybody else kind of fighting for those next 3 spots. And, this game tonight at the Star between Wakeland and Centennial is crucial.
Yeah, Wakeland is a team that I think 4 weeks ago, before they played Frisco Lone Star, I think they were a 1-loss team coming into that game. Everybody looks at Wakeland and say, look, this is going to be a playoff team because of all the guys that they have. Peyton Lewis, a quarterback. Good kid. He's 1,100 yards, 15 touches. So Wakeland is a team that this is a must-win again, right? They're in a situation.
No, it is. You gotta win at this point.
Gotta win this game. But Frisco Centennial is probably ready to play spoiler tonight here at the Star.
No doubt about that. And we'll have some updates throughout the game as that one kind of unfolds, getting kicked off at 7 o'clock. Let's move on to Garland Lakeview Centennial and the Patriots being hosted tonight at HB Johnson Stadium by the Rowlett Eagles. Each team in crucial playoff position. This isn't the best matchup record-wise, but overall these are 2 of the best teams in that 10-6A district, and at the same time they're fighting for that playoff spot.
Now, Guy, you're going to have to help me out with this because mathematically, when you look at Rowlett has a better district record than Lakeview.
4-1.
Exactly. And so Lakeview is 1-3.
3-2.
3-2.
Yeah.
So this game, either way it goes, is going to be pivotal as far as playoffs seeding is concerned.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's a part of the dysfunction, Kyle.
Absolutely.
that I was talking about.
How about this? Let's go through that really quickly because it's a lot of dysfunction. Rowlett clinches a playoff spot with a win over Garland Lakeview Centennial.
Right.
Or a loss from North Garland and Garland Naaman Forest. So that's how Rowlett gets in. On the other side, then you've got Garland Lakeview Centennial. They clinch a spot with a win and a loss from both North Garland and Naaman Forest. So there's a lot to be decided here.
Right. And Kamar Wheaton, we talked about this kid. He's another kid that was on our 25 list, right?
He's a year young, but he would be this next year.
Next year, okay. He was on some list we had. I don't know, slept on, something like that.
Yeah.
But Kamar Wheaton is a kid that is dynamic. He has, a track kid. I didn't know that he's a sub-10, 100-yard dash kid. Also, I mean, he is everything you want in a running back. Right. We talked about him a couple weeks ago, and you said that he didn't jump off the field like you, Zach Evans did. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, as far as his ranking and the kind of running back that everyone else, ESPN 300, is saying that he is, do you see him in that ranking?
Well, I think speed is obviously his strength. Zach has speed and is just a bigger kid in general. And that was kind of what I was saying when I saw Kamar. Just from a body standpoint, it didn't look the same. But he's also much younger than Zach, too, so there's a lot of time for him to still grow as a player. But, some of my stuff was just with Kamar's overall strength. I thought he could have broken some tackles against Wiley that he didn't. But, again, he's still a younger dude. He's got another year left at Lakeview Centennial, so there's a lot of growth still for him. So I'm not really concerned about that. But, no, this is a really important game, and I'll just say it. If Rowlett wins tonight, they then get themselves in a situation with Saxe next week, where it's what Diggs was, referencing with the Avoid Allen Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's a really big game, too, because Rowlett and Saxe actually share a lot of the same kids in the neighborhood. A lot of Saxe's kids actually live in Rowlett.
Yeah.
And I was at that game last year. It's a pretty good rivalry game, and so that'll be a hotly contested one next week, assuming Rowlett wins tonight.
Going back to the 6A ranks, or continuing with the 6A ranks, rather, Louisville and Hebron, the Hawks of Hebron, needing a win today, and of course, at 6-2, kind of now forgotten a little bit. Also, quietly at 7-1, those Louisville Fighting Farmers. Mm-hmm. They've been absolutely incredible this year. This should be a fun matchup and another one of those under-the-radar games here in Week 10 that a lot of people aren't necessarily talking about because the names of the squads might not be that big, but the game itself is going to be magnificent.
Yeah, I like this matchup. I think they're both really strong teams, top of 6A. I'm really excited. I think one really cool thing to point out is Hebron's coach, Brian Brazel. Mm-hmm. He's coached there since 1999. I mean, he's been that sole head coach. Yeah, he's been there. But he, before that, he used to coach at Louisville. Okay. And Louisville's head coach, Michael Odell, he used to coach at Hebron. He was offensive coordinator there back in 2015.
So there's some connections there.
So there is. So there might be a little bit of that rivalry kind of within those two coaches. I'm sure they'll be
friendly
being there tonight. Yeah.
Is it, though?
Sure.
Okay.
Coaches love each other.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. That I guess that would be. But I like that. That's I mean, you don't think about that a whole lot. The coaches having those connections back and forth. Of course, the schools being close together, you're going to get the players knowing
Mallory,
each other.
this is the point where you say this. It's called doing your homework, boys.
That's it.
I had to do a lot of homework for this week, but it was fun homework. This is more fun than I think my homework back at school. Yeah,
that's fair.
But also, I mean, this offense is locked and loaded. I mean, if you look at their quarterback, Talon Green, with 1,500 total yards this year and 20 touchdowns. He's a transfer from Allen, and he's got one offer from Illinois State. So this dude's big time. Wide receiver Armani Winfield. Yeah, thank you for that.
Big time.
Yeah, 603 yards in the season and 8 touchdowns. And I mean, I don't know. Hebron's got that one dude, my dude, Darius Snow, Michigan State commit.
Sparty.
Yeah, I'm a fan of him. But, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop this explosive offense.
Now, I got to get off. I got to say this.
Okay.
Did anybody see the K-State-Oklahoma game?
Yes.
I
watched
so you watched it? Did you watch the whole thing?
Upset.
Now, how about that onside kick here that I got Trajan Bridges? I was like, wait a minute.
I texted the guy when that happened. I was like, hey, we do our next level stars, and I was just kind of taking a poke at it. Like, I love Hebron, and honestly, Bridges in high school was one of the most
It's dynamic.
memorable
He was awesome.
athletes that we've seen go through the DFW area. But I texted Guy, I said, how about him being the next level star this week? Because it bounced right off his knee on that onside kick.
Jack, if you're listening to this, that's Trajan's father. We're just joking around, having
Well,
fun
the thing
with
is
it.
he
But
couldn't
it was
do
an
anything
unfortunate
about
moment
it.
that he couldn't do anything
It was
about
a block.
It was
a
an
block
onside
in the
kick.
back. There was a block in the back. They didn't call that,
That's
and
true. They
that kind of
didn't call it
nullifies
either.
the whole onside kick thing.
Yeah.
But Emo.
Emo, yeah. I forgot about that. You spent a couple years up there.
Come on now.
There you
Emo.
go.
That's a good victory. Anyway.
I like it.
Anyway.
That's funny. Good callback. I like that. Let's move on, going down to Mesquite and Rockwall. We alluded to this game a little bit earlier with Nick Harris in studio. Another one of those games that you look at and you say, hey, Rockwall's the better team, but watch out for the Mesquite Skeeters a little bit tonight.
Yeah, you could say Rockwall's the better team maybe, but from a record
defense
standpoint.
for the Skeeter, though.
Yeah, defense and then the records are the same, so everything's pretty even as far as that goes. Now it's mano-a-mano, and this is a really big game for seeding because both would go D1, I believe, for the playoffs. And so what you have there is who's fighting for the 1 spot and who's fighting for the 2 spot in 6A D1. But you have contrasting styles, like you mentioned, Braden Locke and Jackson Smith. And then you're going up against a good defensive squad in Mesquite, but also a squad that wants to get the job done on offense on the ground with Ladarius Turner and Dylan McGill, who's just a really good athlete at quarterback, kid going to Minnesota. He actually projects as a receiver, but they've gotten the job done. And kind of like our boy Nick Harris said, they're kind of ahead of schedule. So if Mesquite can somehow find a win here on the road, that'd be just a really good program win going forward for Coach Fleener and the Skeeters.
Yeah, stop it. It's over with already. So the thing, stop it. I mean, look, Braden Locke is a kid that we've been talking about from the Highland Park game.
Yeah.
I mean, in that loss,
he was impressive.
He showed more as a true sophomore than a lot of kids shown, and I mean, he's been making a bleep on the radar every week. The way that he's been playing. Not saying that I shouldn't say that it's a loss, but again, just the way that they've been rolling. The one game that they lost to, I mean, come on, Longview put it. That game was over before it started.
Yeah.
That was the one that was over before they got off the buses. But this one right here, I just think that Rockwall is in so much of a role with going with that time period without having Jackson Smith. It just seems natural that this is a game that they get under their belt. Now they're playing this one at.
It's at Rockwall.
It is at Rockwall.
At Wilkerson Sanders. So
the Yellow Jackets. The Orange Jackets.
As Eric Chiafalo
would say.
The Orange Jackets.
And this
baby.
is a really big game for 11-6A from a seeding standpoint, but I think the really big game that we could potentially have next week is Mesquite Horn and Tyler Lee for that 4 spot. With Mesquite beating Tyler Lee a couple weeks ago, they kind of have that buffer win, so they're safe with that 3 spot. Now it's just trying to better their seeding. And them and Rockwall are going to fight that out tonight. But, yeah, 11-6A still have some stuff to figure out on that bottom half of it.
Now, is that something I'm looking at it right now? So Mesquite's already in, so is Rockwall. Both these teams have already in Longview as well. So, but nobody else has been eliminated throughout that district at all.
Correct, but I think that the 2 main teams you need to look at are Horn and Tyler Lee for next week. Yeah.
Okay, and so the fact that they play each other brings even added significance to that come week 11. Let's move on to Wilmer Hutchins and Alvarado. Is it Alvarado?
Alvarado.
I knew it was Alvarado. I'm just testing you. Okay. The Indians, always impressive, 7-1, taking on Wilmer Hutchins. And you got a chance to see this Hutch team up close and personal. Was it last week?
It was last week against Carter at the Hutch.
What did you think about this Wilmer Hutchins squad? At 5-3, do they have an opportunity to take down the Indians?
I think so. I think, it all depends on the health of Kyle Douglas going forward. I'm not really sure if he's completely healthy yet. He may tell you otherwise. I'm sure he would. Watching last week, it was just a rainy game. It was a messy type of rain, too. It was misty and it was windy, so he struggled to pass the ball consistently. And just watching him move around in the backfield and in the pocket, he just didn't look 100%. But they've got a good running game. They've got a good defense, too, led by Elsie Barnett Jr. and his brother Elsie Barnett III, and their dad is Elsie Barnett Sr., and he's the head coach. So it's just a family affair. But on defense, they have some dogs over there, and I know they're hungry. The big speech after the game was, "You take care of business next week against Alvarado," and here we are now. You got district championship coming home, so it means a lot for them, and that would be 2 years in a row for the Hutch to win that district.
That's big.
But they've got Alvarado in the way, and the Indians have been really good. as a program the last couple years, and that hasn't really changed this year. And so they have a big test as they have to go on the road to Alvarado and play that game south of Fort Worth.
Yeah, that you did an interview with the kid,
Barnett.
Barnett,
But it's junior.
Yeah,
Passion.
passion. I'm telling you, everything about that kid says I am a coach's son, right? I mean, because he answered all of your questions like a coach's son would answer those questions. Yeah, we're gonna watch film, we're gonna rest, we're gonna kick our feet up, we're gonna get back to business, all that. And I mean, he answered them right, but then he has an Alvarado team that comes in this week that is very talented as well. I mean, Kyle Douglas Jr., anything that you saw, like you said last week, he's not 100%, but I would take a 70% Kyle Douglas Jr. any day of the week because that kid is just that dynamic. Last week versus Carter, he showed up and showed out.
Yeah, in key moments.
Definitely. And so that's what I'm saying. I think that makes the difference in the game tonight because all of the playmakers, from my perspective, at Hutch.
Okay. Yeah, and they do. And that's the thing is with Elzy, like, in junior, I think third's coming up. He's only a sophomore right now. But junior, I think, is a steal for Arkansas Pine Bluff. He really impressed me last week. He's a little bit of an undersized safety, but he's a dude at the next level that I think for SWAC play could be a steal and it'd be good for the Golden Lions. So there's a little, shout out to them. But
man, come on, Arkansas Pine Bluff sighting.
Yeah, you didn't think that you probably see that on that finesse. But anyway, no, Look, they're hungry for it, and I just like how that whole program is kind of run. They have an edge on their shoulder, and or chip on their shoulder, sorry, and play with an edge. And I think tonight's a really good opportunity for the Hutch to get back-to-back district championships, and that's huge going into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's huge, and got to give a little bit of love to that 4A division as well between those two squads. Two very good ball clubs going up against each other. But Heckma, now it's your time to shine.
What's up? What you got for me?
South Grand Prairie, DeSoto.
The Gopher Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's at DeSoto.
It's at Eagle Stadium.
Oh, yeah, I was just saying because we were talking about it earlier.
We were talking about the Gopher Warrior
Bowl.
Bowl. Just a great stadium overall. But
so is Eagle Stadium, though.
Hey, let me tell you something, man.
I know how you feel about these DeSoto Eagles.
Oh, I do. I feel strongly, and I think that the Dallas Morning News need to put some respect on their name. They need to put some respect on their name. I thought, look, it's one of those things. Look, Duncanville is.
You've called out DMN today.
Huh?
It's the second time you've called out the Dallas Morning News.
Well,
today.
I'm going to call him out again. The Dallas Morning News better put some respect on their name. The Eagles are a good team. And when I came back to you when I got an opportunity to call the Dunn game with them, I mean, speed galore. As I said earlier in the show, talking about weather, that Mansfield team that beat DeSoto, they better thank God for the rain that they had to beat DeSoto. Because if DeSoto plays them 10 weeks, they win 10 weeks. If you put them in the rain, Summit wins that one game. And I mean, 27-26, and it took a miracle throw from their quarterback to get that victory. But I'm telling you, DeSoto is loaded at every position, and they are the one team that you talk about in North Texas that could beat a Duncanville because of the athletes that they have. There's no 1A, 1B here. Samari Collier is for real. Yeah. Okay? Their defense, those kids that they have, Jason Brown is for real. The other kid, Brown, number 1, the receiver, for real.
Jabbar Muhammad.
Better say his name. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They got a bunch of dogs over there.
They do.
And so for the people that's thinking that, okay, DeSoto, it's just going to go again, lay a goose egg versus Duncanville. I just don't see it like that. I think there's a lot of DeSoto pride. They've won a state championship. Right. All right, so put some respect on their name. And when they get this victory tonight, SGP has been my darling team. I've been talking about these kids. Drizzy Drake Logan is my man.
Well,
I think he got hurt a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, is he healthy tonight? That is
the question. We don't get injury reports, so we don't know that. And I'm just going with my gut on this and just saying, basically, I know the better team is going to be the DeSoto Eagles.
Well, they have a lot to prove. Claude, he speaking of chip on your shoulders, he walks around with one and has an attitude that the program does.
My God.
That's just Claude being Claude, and there's nothing wrong with that. But no, I think after last week's loss, it was a messy game. I was at the game, so it was kind of hard to get a read on DeSoto after that. But there's a lot of legit talent there between Jabbar Muhammad, Shamar Turner, who didn't play last week. Curious to see if he's healthy. But Samari Collier, like you said, I think the receiver you were trying to reference was Jordan Brown.
Yeah.
So they've got dudes. Armaj Adams, Reed on the O-line. There's dudes all over the place. And with SGP, I think they kind of ride or die with Drake Logan.
Yeah.
So depending on his health tonight, we'll kind of, figure out how much of a chance they really have in this game. But I think DeSoto's going to take care of business tonight, and then that sets up a big battle for Beltline next week with Cedarville. And this whole, avoid Duncanville deal, I think you would probably obviously want to play them later in the playoffs, but knowing that DeSoto program, they'll take them on whenever.
That's a good point overall.
It's a street fight.
Well, these are two teams that are most likely out of that district going to represent Division I in the playoffs.
Right.
So South Grand Prairie clinches with a win or with a Mansfield loss tonight. So and Mansfield taking on Cedar Hill. So that brings us to quite possibly the most tense part of the show. Wouldn't you say, Heckma?
Put some respect on my name.
Well, you're in last. Oh, you're not in last. You're tied for last place right now.
No, I'm not.
Prediction time.
How am I tied for last place?
Because you entered last week tied for last place, and then we all ended up going 3-2.
I was not tied for last place.
Yes, you were. Go check it.
Not.
Go check it.
Dude,
There's the standings.
You guys
can check
are,
it up there.
You are Bernie Madoff in the numbers
I will
every
send it
week,
to you.
Kyle.
I'm going to send it to you right now. Anyways,
Chris, do something about this, man.
Going on, there you see, that's my name, Zach Heckma, and Eric. Now, guys made a couple of predictions throughout the year. We might have to go back and find it because I know you picked these games anyways.
Well, and I've even made some tonight on accident, just sprinkling it in.
There you go.
Have Eric?
Me too.
And
Yeah.
Mallory's made some predictions as well. We'll go back and find that throughout. But we've got some prediction games to get to quickly. Starting off, and Mallory's already made her prediction in this one. Arlington Lamar, Arlington Bowie, our first one to get started. You said...
Bowie, I'm sorry. My dad actually texted me and said he was very disappointed.
Yeah,
family.
Mr.
And
Hartley,
Dad, sorry.
Mr. Hartley, I agree with you,
And
sir.
maybe apologize to your brother, who's going to be putting
Joey,
it out
I'm
there today.
sorry. You're going to do great. I think it's going to be a close game, though.
No
I mean,
doubt,
I think
for sure.
it'll be
Yeah.
close, but I think Bowie's got a little bit of the upper edge on this game.
All right, Heckma.
Yeah, I'm not going against that. Bowie is definitely the better team, and so Arlington Bowie.
Yeah, I'm going to go Bowie. That's kind of a darling program of mine. I think they're a bunch of junkyard dogs. I will say, though, do not sleep on Lamar and forget about them.
Yeah.
Trevon West and some of those guys.
Jack Dawson.
Joey Hartley.
Joey Hartley. There's dudes on both sides of the ball.
I'm going to go with Bowie here as well. Moving on to Birdville and Colleyville Heritage. I'll start this one out. I'm going to go with Colleyville Heritage at home to take down Birdville. I just think they're the more complete team overall, and I think it's going to be a Colleyville Heritage win. Guy, who you got?
I'm going to go with Colleyville. Oh, no, sorry, Birdville. I actually sprinkled that in earlier. I think they do get a win on the road. I am kind of curious about Birdville going forward without Mixon.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of been a question for me all year, but I will take the Hawks tonight.
Yeah, this is one of the tough ones, man, because you know Earl and what he's doing. I mean, this is great.
Stone.
Yeah, Stone's a great quarterback. But you look over at Colleyville and just losing 3 games to undefeated teams and teams that's only lost 1 game. Joe Willis, I think he makes a difference in this game from a coach's standpoint. So I'm going Colleyville Heritage.
Cool.
I'm going Birdville. I kind of agreed with everything the guy said. I'm looking forward to playing. They've got a tough game next week against Denton Ryan, so I'm excited to see that. It'll test Denton Ryan's legitability.
One game at a time.
So
one game at a
yeah,
time.
I know. I'm just looking ahead. I'm excited.
Is that our first Malloryism?
She just did it.
That was a
I'm glad you
Malloryism.
Legitibility.
Legitibility, baby. We're gonna tag that one every time we come to a legitibility.
Hashtag legitibility. I like it.
We love that.
All right, I'm going to go with so Frisco Independence and the Colony. I'm going to go with the Colony at home. And I know, Guy, you said Independence. It was you, Heckma, that said no way Independence loses this game. I think the firepower from the Colony with Harrington, along with with Turner on the outside, or is it Price?
Yeah, Miles Price.
Miles Price. I keep saying Turner.
Yeah.
With Miles Price on the outside, I think the Colony is way too good in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Colony too. I think they have a little bit more firepower than Independence. I think it's going to be potentially a high-scoring shootout.
I think so
type
too.
of game. Neither team has really played a ton of defense this year at times. But the Colony better start figuring it out because they might have to play Timberview in the first round of the playoffs. And if they have that happen again like last year, it could be another upset. And, this would be a game, start figuring out that whole issue on defense. And they've got guys, I think they can do it.
Yeah, I'm going back. Braylon Braxton, man.
He's incredible.
I've got an opportunity to see this kid a couple of times, and I am just so in love with his talent and his legs. This guy has an arm. He has all of it. So I just don't see – I think if it comes down to it, Independence wins this game.
I think I'm going to go with the Colony.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You didn't sound too sure
She
about
does. She
that.
doesn't.
I really don't. I think it's going to be a really close game. These two teams are really similar stat-wise. I think it's going to be a super high-scoring game for sure. I mean, they both put up a lot of yardage throughout the year and a lot of points averaging. So I think I'm going to go with
Now, I might be wrong in this. Did you cover this game for us last year?
I didn't.
You weren't at this one? Okay. I know you've covered games for both
Frisco
of them.
Independence game, but I don't.
It
Maybe
wasn't
we have
there
the
in
great
Colony.
Josh Price there.
Yeah, we do have the great Josh Price there. Oh, no, he's at the next one. He's at Louisville and Hebron.
Yes,
this
he's
week.
at that. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and pick that one. Louisville and Hebron. Speaking of it, and we've got Josh's pick as well, and I'm going to go with Louisville.
Yeah,
in a close one. I'm not very sure about that. It might go either way, but I'm going to go with Louisville.
I'm going to go with Louisville. Hebron's kind of burned me a couple times this year.
Yeah.
I will say, though, it does kind of sketch me out that they're having to go play this at Hebron. That's a place where funny things happen.
Crazy things.
And I know, Walchuk, if you're listening, you're a big fan of Hebron's Hawk Stadium and their home field environment. With that said, I'm going to go with the Fighting Farmers.
This is a tough one. I need this one. Who'd you go with?
I went with Louisville. We both went with Louisville.
Oh, God.
Pick Hebron.
Now I'm going Louisville.
Oh, okay.
Me too.
Oh, Louisville across the board.
Strong offense. Really strong
And the
offense.
big one.
I didn't expect that. All right, Guy, you excited about this next one?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one
Highland
for me.
Park and the Scotties taking on the Lancaster Tigers.
In Weibo country.
In Weibo country. Can Highland Park lose twice?
I mean, they did in 2016.
That's fair, and they ended up winning a state championship.
And sometimes that's not always a bad thing. But I don't think it happens tonight. I think, last year Highland Park did beat Weibo 39-14 and kind of pulled away in a game that I didn't expect it to be that big of a difference in the final score. I think it is much closer this year. I still kind of question some of the stuff with the quarterback situation at Lancaster. At some point, Glenn Rice Knight is going to have to make a play, whether it's a third and long type situation or just a big moment. And I'm kind of curious to see how he measures up against Chandler. It's a big spot for a sophomore. I don't trust that as much, so I'm going to roll with the Scotties.
All right.
Go to Mallory.
All right, Mallory.
All right, I'm ready. I'm going with Highland Park. I think,
Okay with that.
yeah, Chandler
confident
Morris
with it,
and
too.
Hunter Heath. If you got those two on your team, I mean,
You're all right.
yeah, you're doing pretty. You're doing something right.
So,
for sure.
The thing that I'm looking at here is the fact that Lancaster has two stud cornerbacks.
Yep. Mirando Johnson and Theron Shrews.
Yep, they got some stud corners.
Yep.
They have a defense now that's better than they were last year.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent.
Right. The one thing about Highland Park that I feel like when you put them against some of those good defenses, when you get Chandler Morris is at his best when he has to improvise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's going to be a bunch of improvising by Chandler Morris. I'm going HP.
You're going to go
Let's
HP.
Stop it.
It's a really good test for him, though, with Theron and Lorando in that secondary in general for Lancaster. So I'm excited to watch him, and I think he rises to the occasion. And Chandler, I always know you pull through in those moments. So excited for you.
Was that a personal message?
That was a personal
message.
Okay.
They're
And
buds.
it's a personal message for everybody in that game. Karan, Lorando, everybody.
Okay.
Go kick some tail tonight. I love all of y'all.
Scott to Highland Park Scott.
And
It's
to
a
Lancaster
fraternity.
Tigers there.
That's fair. You did throw some Lancaster in
Yeah.
there.
Go
Now,
DQ everybody.
With that being said, I forgot to make my pick to start. Usually I'll start this off, but I think Lancaster is a terrible matchup for Highland Park. I think the speed is a problem. That secondary for Highland Park is going to get exposed a couple times tonight. There's a lot going on, but with that being said, Highland Park has the better quarterback, and Highland Park has the better coach. And I'm going to go with the Scots in that one, just for that sole reason. I think this is a good game, and I would not be surprised if Lancaster comes out with a win. However, I still think Highland Park is going to come out on top in this one.
And this would be win 400 for Coach Allen in his career if he gets this one tonight.
It's earned.
So
that would be an earned win, is what that would be.
Yes.
Not a lot of coaches out there with 300 wins, or 400 wins, excuse me. And Randy Allen could join some pretty elusive company in that regard.
He's
So that's
like
going to do it.
second winningest active coach in Texas right now.
Yeah, he's
That's
been
insane.
unbelievable. That's going to do it for Whataburger Friday Night Stars in our kickoff show. Be sure to join us 9 to 11 tonight. We'll go back into overtime and talk things over, see how these games unfold. It's a pretty awesome week of Texas high school football. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Friday_Stars, on Instagram at the same level. Tweet at us throughout the night. Get your tweets featured on our tag board by using the hashtag Friday Night Stars. Should be a fun week of high school football. For Mallory Hartley, for Heckma Harrison, for Guy Frazier, and you've also got Chris Beam and Matt Kent in studio. We'll see you at 9 o'clock.